For over 20 years as a professional economist, I've spent time at Ivy Leagues, many countries across North America and Europe, understanding how the elite manage their money. Over 20 years at universities in finance, economics, mathematics, and high-performance computing. Cambridge University, Trinity College Dublin, Northwestern University, the University of Pennsylvania, Villanova University, even the Federal Reserve, among others. Now, over 10 years studying, over 10 years working, Ivy Leagues, world-leading institutions, central banks, and economic policy research institutes. Networking with Nobel Prize winners. I've run multiple successful businesses and investments as a millionaire. And after all of that, I've discovered you don't need to have a high income. You don't need a PhD or even a degree. You don't need to be fantastic at mathematics to manage your money, just like the elite do. Just a simple path of action and consistent commitment. Two things, skill and will. And in this video, I'm going to open up and share my mind on everything I've learned over the last 2 decades of my career on personal finance and the strategies that the elite use to manage their finances. This is the only video that you will ever need to start building your wealth, and it doesn't matter where you're starting from. So we're going to cover the following. Look, first, we're going to diagnose your starting point. When you open up Google Maps, the directions require a starting point first. This is where you start and where you stand. And we're going to briefly ask, where are you going? What mini goals or what would a mini future snapshot look like? The number one goal in finance is net wealth. This is the difference between what you own, that's assets, and what you owe with an E, that's liabilities. And this rises with your cash flow if you earn more than you spend. And it falls if you spend more than you earn. So imagine being debt-free, fully automated, investing with confidence. Next, we're going to slay your debt with a strategy to create relief and empowerment. Here's how we're going to clear the runway so there's no debris. The plane can take off, your financial plane. Third, we're going to set goals. These have to be specific. I want you to dream in Technicolor, all the colors of the rainbow. I want the goals, and I want you guys to also come up with your affirmations. You want to see these things actually happening. Believe in this. It will happen. This is important that you aspire. Number 4, build an actionable plan. Here's how we're going to make your goals real. This is practical and it's going to give you confidence. So now that we know where we're going, it's time to connect the dots. Your budget isn't about restricting you. It's the roadmap that funds your goals. You learn exactly where your money is going and how much we can redirect towards your goals automatically. So we're going to turn this momentum and this clarity into action. 5th, automate and accelerate. We're going to simplify for consistency. Once you've built your action plan, this is where the real magic happens. So we're going to set up a simple automated money system. It's going to handle everything for you, paying off your debt, funding your savings, and moving money towards your investments without you even needing to think about it. That's great, right? Like when you automate, you stay consistent. You avoid decision fatigue that leaves you just jaded and finally get control over your money. 6th, we're going to invest. This isn't the fun part, right? This is once your system is running and automated, it's time to grow your wealth and make your money work for you. You worked long enough to make it and hard enough to make it work for you. Saving alone won't get you where you want to go. Investing is what accelerates your freedom. And the earlier you start, the faster you'll buy back your time and freedom. Now, when your money works hard for you, it's like stepping into a financial time machine to the future. And that's where we're going to dive into when and how to start investing, how to know that you're ready, and why waiting even just 1 year. You wouldn't think about this, right? But 1 year of waiting, that can cost you guys thousands in future freedom. It just hurts me so much to know this. I hope you guys know it as well. I hope you learn this from this video. I'm also going to show you how to fund your biggest goals, from buying your first property to reaching financial independence faster, whatever they are. Knock yourself out. Now, number 7 is what I like to call accelerators and pitfalls, good and bad. So once your investments are working for you, the next step is to make sure that you're not leaking wealth without realizing. It's like a bucket with holes. I'll show you a few smart shortcuts to accelerate your financial freedom and avoid the mistakes that I see most people make, from choosing the right cars and homes, to minimizing taxes, to setting up simple protections that wealthy families use. But look, just beyond just watching or listening, you can apply this to your own finances. And I'll share examples as we go with questions to make it specific and personal to you. It's like Tony Robbins style, and practical tools to put everything into action. And if you want to use any of the templates or guides that I mentioned, they're all part of my Wealth Builders Toolkit, from paycheck to financial freedom. It gives you all the tools you need to manage your money, just like the elite, and start true wealth creation. It's not just spreadsheets. It's a complete financial decision-making system. And the link below this video in the description is there if you want to check it out. So by the end of this video, you're going to be financially literate, and you're going to have the exact plan to build not just a secure base, but a solid path to achieving your financial dreams. One step at a time, I like telling you guys. Harnessing the power of finance and riding the wave rather than getting crushed under it. So let's build your wealth. Step 1, let's map your starting point. So when you open up Google Maps, it always asks for 2 things: your destination, but also your starting point. Now, most of us are great at dreaming about the destination. Be financial freedom, retiring early, buying a home, taking that big once-in-a-lifetime trip. But the app can't give you any directions without first knowing where are you right now. Like, turn on your settings, right? Show where you are, or at least put it in. So look, when I first started with gym training years and years and years ago, I had to weigh myself. I had to measure the size of my body, figuring out how healthy I was, and just figuring out my weaknesses and what they were so that I could improve. Measuring helps. What gets measured gets mastered, and the same is true with your finances. Without diagnosing your current starting point, your goals are just wishes. So look, this step is non-negotiable, because here's the truth. Your future wealth isn't random. It's the direct result of your income and your expenses, what you're taking in and what you're spending. And the difference between those two is your savings. And then you are optimizing that difference, right? So if those numbers are invisible, you're flying blind. And flying blind is how people stay stuck for years, even when they're working hard. A ship without a destination wanders aimlessly, but first, we need to know where our starting point is. Now, this isn't about guilt or shame, it's about clarity. Once you know your starting point, you'll see exactly which levers to pull, whether that's raising your income, reducing your unnecessary spending, paying off all debt, and then boosting your savings rate. And just like with Google Maps, once we set that starting point, we can look at different destinations and even test different routes to get there. And that's why in this first step, we're going to use a simple diagnostic framework, your net wealth. That's everything that you own with an N minus everything that you owe with an E, and your monthly cash flow. And that's the gap between what's coming in and what's going out. With those 2 numbers, right, your net wealth and your cash flow, we will have a crystal clear view of where you stand today and what's possible for your future. Look, you can use whatever works for you. You can create your own spreadsheet, and there are plenty of apps. Just don't get overwhelmed in anything too complicated that feels like a chore. That's not the point. The main thing is to stay on track. Your first need to know your two numbers, your take-home income and your spending. Now, we're going to start by doing this monthly, but for the best results, these ones occur when you do this for yearly numbers. It's more accurate because it gives you a better average monthly picture. If you look at the yearly, this is going to take into consideration those annual vacations or the seasonal expenses like gifts, like holiday gifts, and potential income bonuses. Now, with your take-home or your net income, enter everything like your salary, your bonus, freelance, business, rental income if you've got rentals, dividend income, interest income, government benefits, child support, alimony if you're receiving anything, or any other type of income, right? Like the bank of mom, the bank of dad, right? Whatever you're actually getting, right? This is after tax. Your goal is to increase your income in the future. So this should be your baseline. Try to get an idea of what this average monthly income will be over your year and enter it into the budget column. With your expenses, again, you can use an app or your bank statements, but we are first looking at fixed or regular expenses like rent, and there are plenty of other ones like that. Then we're going to look at variable expenses or irregular spending, like dates. Again, plenty of other irregular spending. Could be your entertainment, you name it. Again, try to get an idea of what this average monthly spending will be over your year and enter it into the budget column. At this point, it's not super important to be detailed. We just want a ballpark idea. We're going to come back later and we're going to comb through it to plug the leaking holes where you didn't realize you were spending so much. And we can reduce spending there without it hurting. But that's not the point right now. Right now, we want you to be consistent and to build good habits first. So we just need a rough idea of the overall total income after taxes and expenses. The gap between your income and your expenses is going to be your saving, which we will want to maximize and optimize to how it grows. So we can get you out of debt rather than further into debt. In fact, being further into debt is going to take you further and further away from your financial freedom. The bigger this savings gap is, the faster you can save and invest, and the faster you can buy back independence, options, time, freedom, look, whatever you value and dream about the most. But we're going to cover these areas in more detail in later sections, so don't worry about any of this for now. Just get your income and your spending down. Again, the difference between your income and your spending, it's called cash flow. Now, with that basic income and spending or cash flow done, the most important of all is your net wealth. This is the difference between the assets that you own with an N and the liabilities that you owe with an E. Now, more cash flow from income being higher than spending, that's going to boost your net wealth, which is good. Taking on more liabilities, on the other hand, that can lead you further and further into debt. It takes money out of your pocket. So think about liabilities as things that take money out of your pocket, assets that put money into your pocket. So think about liabilities like mortgages, credit card balances, car loans, personal loans. But that said, near the end of this video, I'm going to cover some tips on how you can convert your liabilities into assets by potentially renting out or even buying strategically and becoming your very own asset manager, turning liabilities into assets. But for now, let's focus on just naming your liabilities and naming your assets. On the flip side of the liabilities, assets are valuable, like savings, investments, property, rare possessions like art, if you've got luxury Rolex watches, or even some musical instruments like Steinway grand pianos, or Stradivarius for those that are in strings. Now list all your major purchases and their values. While liabilities take money out of your pocket, as I said, assets put money into your pocket. The key goal here is to increase the difference or increase your net wealth over time. So use income to buy assets. That's what the rich do. That's going to boost your net wealth. Income, it buys your lifestyle. You can afford a nice life. But net wealth buys you freedom. This is what really matters long term. This is why it's so important. It doesn't matter where you start from, right? Because you could be earning $300,000 a year, but spending all of it. You got a great lifestyle, but if you stop working in the morning, you've no freedom. You got to keep running on the hamster wheel. So what really matters is that you start to increase your net wealth from now on, whether you're earning very little or whether you're earning a lot. Doesn't matter either way. Later in this video, we're going to look at topics like investing, buying a car, and a house, and we'll see this concept again. Every financial decision either builds assets or builds liabilities. So understanding the difference is the fastest way to start building real wealth versus feeling busy with money. Now, there are ways or hacks that you can do to improve your lifestyle without expenses, using things like credit card points, but that's a more advanced topic, and before we run, we're going to walk. So we're starting here with an honest, simple snapshot of where you are today, right now. So now that you see your starting point, right, your income, your expenses, and your savings rate, the natural question is, okay, but where does this actually get me? So here's the finish line, okay? We're cheating, we're looking in advance, looking at the ending, a bit of a spoiler, but this calculator gives us a snapshot. With the numbers I plugged in here for income and for expenses, it's calculated that for this person, it's a 35% savings rate. So they're saving 35% of their income. Now you'd be financially independent in about 25 years at this rate. The savings rate is the only number you need here. If you can nudge it higher, you can cut that down dramatically. So if you can drop your expenses or if you can raise your income, suddenly that timeline shrinks. That's the power of the savings rate. It's not about a dollar amount, it's about how much of your life that you keep. Every extra 1% that you save buys you years of freedom. I cannot stress this strongly enough. Let's have a look at this. So see that W? That's our assumed safe withdrawal rate. If we use 4%, so we're taking 4% out of our nest egg, then the freedom target is just 25 times your annual yearly spending. If you spend X dollars a year, then just multiply that by 25. If it's, let's say, $100,000 a year for those ballers out there, then it's 2.5 million is what you need. Again, your savings rate, S, is the speedometer. Raise the savings rate more by earning more or spending less, and your years to retire numbers shrink fast. By the way, that 4%, it comes from an old study. You can vary this. Again, 4%, you take 4% of your nest egg out, and you can increase that over time with inflation, and you're 95% of the time, roughly speaking, you'll be covered. You'll never get wiped out. Again, you can lower it if you're more conservative, or you can raise it if you're more kind of risk tolerant. But 4% is a good hard and fast rule. Doesn't give you everything, but it is pretty realistic over the long run. We're going to dive deeper later, but for now, remember one thing. Cutting $1 of annual spending permanently lowers the finish line by about $25 at a 4% safe withdrawal rate. So for instance, if your annual spending is $58,680, specific I know, the financial independent or FI target is $1.467 million, right? If you can lower your spending, then this gets smaller. But for many people, debt is what slows this whole process down. And if your savings rate is eaten by credit cards, loans, or interest, your years to retire just stretches further and further. So before we can race to financial freedom, we need to clear the runway. What slows this down the most? Debt interest. It drags your savings rate down and it pushes the finish line out. So next, we're going to clear the runway by slaying debt. Now, section 2 on slaying debt. This is important. If you have debt, then a strategy can make all the difference, which is what we'll put into place right now. Not all debt is bad. Some debt can build your future if you manage it well. Some debt for investment or even for insurance purposes is what we'll call strategic debt. So suppose that you take out a student loan to raise your earning potential, or a loan on an asset that will appreciate over time like a house. So rather than just considering investing in the stock market or in the UK, what would be the FTSE, we will invest in footing your own self, in foots me, right? That's yourself. So you are your own highest returning asset. These debts can work in your favor, making you more money. And other debt, it's toxic debt, like such as debt for vices like drink, gambling, drugs, or debt for pure consumption like a flat screen TV that you gotta have. These debts can work in the other direction. They can cost you money. Credit card debt, payday loans, short-term financing for consumption, or vices. They may seem harmless at first, but they can really stack up and pull you away from your goals, right? It's like lobsters that are dragging you back into the bucket just when you were escaping. So knowing that difference between good and bad debt will help you prioritize. And look, if you've got multiple debts, you need to know what's helping you and what's hurting you. The first step to success in slaying your debt is understanding this. The next step towards success is getting all your information in one place. Use a spreadsheet, pieces of paper, a notebook, an app, it doesn't matter. Look, whatever you use, as long as you're using something to track it. For every debt you have, just jot down the amount that you owe, the interest rate, minimum payment, and you may be able also to see how much longer you have until it's paid off. Now, we're not just paying debt down, we're increasing your savings rate. Remember that? So that your years to freedom shrink. Now, once everything is laid out in front of you, you can visualize it, and visualization helps you understand it, and in turn you can work with it. But now it's time to finally choose a repayment strategy, and there are two main ones. First, we have the debt avalanche approach. We're going to rank your debt from highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. And look, if I click on the spreadsheet here, you'll see how the order of the debt changes. This method ranks from highest to lowest based on interest rate. And what you do is you put as much money as you can towards the top one that's charging the most interest, while you're paying the minimum, remember to pay the minimum, on the others as you work your way down. If you don't pay the minimum, you're going to accrue more and more fees. This is the mathematical approach, as it's the most efficient way in terms of saving you the largest amount of money. But second, an alternative approach is the debt snowball method. Here we're going to rank your debt, the size of it, from the smallest balance to the largest balance. So look, if I click here, you'll see how the order of the debt changes. This method ranks again from smallest to largest in terms of the amount owed. So we're going to start by paying off the smallest amount of debt first, ignoring the interest rate. I know, it's mathematical blasphemy, but the psychological tricks really do work when you get those quick wins first. It's like lifting small amount of weight on the first day at the gym. If you go back, because you were able to complete your first gym session with ease, you're going to go back, right? Because you're going to get that feeling of good. Whereas if you start the first day and you're trying to bench 1,000 pounds, something crazy, it's probably not going to happen. You're going to get demotivated. So you get quick wins paying off a smaller amount first, faster, than you could pay off the larger amount. Quick wins, psychological, emotional, it works for most of us. Then you roll your payments over to the next debt, right? Once the first debt is paid off. Then once that second debt is paid off, go to the next debt and the next one and the next one. And you feel really good. And that's how it works in practical order. It's more of an emotional or psychological approach, but it works by building confidence when you knock off the loans one by one in order of debt size. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, which path should I choose? It's better picking one and sticking with it, whichever you feel you'll stick through. Look, for most of us, it's probably going to be Snowball, and Snowball definitely if you need motivation. Avalanche, look, if you're very able to control your emotions, then Avalanche if you want to save money and you are committed. Now, I am an Avalanche guy, but if you don't stick to it, then it's much, much better choosing the Snowball approach. The important thing is taking action and persisting. Just do it. Don't give up. Both strategies are better than doing nothing. A hybrid payoff strategy is what I like to call dominant interest plus micro wins. So you want to target the highest rate with about 90% of that extra money you have. That's the avalanche. But you want to send 10% to the smallest balance, which is like the snowball for dopamine wins. So you're going to get the mathematical efficiency and the momentum. There are two levers. Paying faster, that's the balances, and also lowering the interest rate. You heard that last part right. I'm going to call this flexing your debt, or flex your debt, make it flexible. See whether there's any flexibility on each debt. So what you do is you call each lender and you ask for a rate cut or a hardship plan or late fee waivers and log or record the results. Now, if they'll drop you to a fixed, let's say 6 to 9% for 1 to 5 years, then probably you should consider taking it. Next, what you want to do is you want to compare a 0% balance transfer, but only if the 3 to 5% fee they usually charge you up front is less than the interest that you'd pay at your current rate. And you can kill that balance before the promotion ends. So once the rates are lowered, we're going to freeze the spending on those cards. We're going to automate the minimums on everything. And we're going to funnel all the extra into your target debt. Now, you can use the avalanche if you're looking for mathematical optimality, or snowball if you need the wins fast. That's how just one 10-minute phone call can shave months off your payoff and years off your freedom date. So just ring up the loan company and say the following. Hi, I've been a customer for whatever number of years you've been a customer for. I'm working on a structured payoff and I want to keep this account. Can you help me lower my rate? Or could you place me on a hardship rate for maybe 12 to 60 months? Now I can commit to, let's say it's $100 per month, whatever that number is. If not, I'm considering a balance transfer, but I'd prefer to stay with you if we can get a better rate. So we're going to enter the boxes here. Balance, current rate, monthly payment, balance transfer, BT fee percentage, balance transfer months, that's BT months. We're going to look at the post-promo rate, so after the promo ends, if there's any leftover, we haven't paid it back by the time the actual promotion has ended. Also the rate cut target, if you manage to cut your rates, and the hardship rate and the hardship term. So what you want to do is you want to fill these numbers out after calling up the lenders, and then everything gets calculated for you. So all you got to do here is look at the recommended action. In this case, it looks like the best thing to do is to go to a 0% balance transfer. And we can see the savings versus the baseline is huge, right? That's the cheapest path for your numbers. We're saving a whopping $2,109.08. and it's going to take us about 26 months to pay off. And just below that, by the way, you can see the actual cost, total cost in terms of fees and interest for the various options. So you can really see how much cheaper, right? That BT balance transfer is very, very cheap. The total cost is much lower. So we compare that to the baseline, we're getting that $2,100 savings. All you have to do is enter those boxes in white on the left. And in the gray, you're given what's recommended. And by the way, I'm currently not a licensed financial advisor. This is not financial advice. And if you need financial advice, I suggest that you consult with a licensed financial advisor. This is just my opinions. Who am I to know? 20 years doing this kind of stuff. So just take it with a grain of salt. And even if I was a licensed financial advisor, I would have to be your financial advisor to give you financial advice. Now, in terms of category-specific flexibility, you've got student loans, like federal student loans. So here we're thinking about getting an auto pay discount. Or you can look at income-driven repayment or save programs sometimes, where sometimes, depending on how long your qualified repayments have been going on, you can potentially have forgiveness. There are all these kind of plans like that. There's interest saving consolidation, where again, it's important to keep the federal protection by looking at public versus private. You want to focus on public loans. In terms of auto or personal loans, think about credit union refinancing quotes. They're often the easiest interest rate wins, because there you might be able to get a lower rate or a shorter term potentially. No or even low fees. Now, there's also make sure that when you're doing this that you check that there's no prepayment penalty. Very important, that one. In terms of your mortgage, well, look, you can recast that after you make a lump sum payment. You know, this usually when you put a lump sum payment into your mortgage, this is going to lower your monthly payment that you're doing, as opposed to a full refinance. A full refinance, the goal there is to lower the interest rate or potentially change the term, the actual that you're on. Also to get rid of, I've done in the past, get rid of the PMI, MIP if you're FHA, but private mortgage insurance for conventional loans, or mortgage interest premium MIP for those that have Federal Housing Association FHA loans. Or sometimes they do refinances just to get the cash out to put it into another property or something else, cash out. Or sometimes just to title change, okay, because they want to maybe move it from a personal to a LLC. That's usually a different type of loan though. Again, another thing you can try to do is consider, would you like to speed up the process by making bi-monthly or bi-weekly payments? That's basically twice a month. So that usually means that you're going to be paying a little bit extra, like a 13-month payment essentially over a year, because you're paying twice a month. That's 52 weeks. So that just works out just like that, so that you're getting a little bit faster. You might shave a few years off the pay down. And also you're paying more principal off each month. So your equity is growing faster, although at the other side of the coin, your interest rate deduction isn't quite keeping up with pace. Again, you got to do that, up to you whether you want to do that or not. But we want to do really overall, we want to lock in the best interest rates, and we're going to run the payoff plan. So lock automation, make sure you hit your minimums, make sure you have one weekly top up to like the target debt, but watch the fine print, the transfer fees. How long is the promo until it expires? Are there any deferred interest? You don't want that. Like on store cars in particular, like if you've got different store cars for different, like Walmart, etc., they sometimes charge what's known as retroactive interest if you don't finish it. So also check out, you make sure that like there's no payment holidays where interest piles up. Short relief is only good if it speeds up the payoff. So do this today. Give yourself a 15-minute timer to call just 2 lenders and celebrate wins. Even a 3-point rate cut is worth hundreds over a year. Now, it wouldn't be right to discuss debt without mentioning debit cards and credit cards, like the differences, because, you know, how we use them, it's going to shape our financial habits over time. Now, debit cards, they spend your money by pulling cash straight, directly from your bank account. Credit cards, on the other hand, they're going to be spending the bank's money, not yours. They're going to be lending you money. And if you don't pay on time, they're going to charge you an interest rate, usually very high. But if used wisely, if you pay back in full on time at the end of every month or every payment period, credit cards can be a great, very smart tool, as they offer points, cash back in some cases, or travel rewards, essentially giving you free stuff for spending money that you were going to spend anyway organically. So if you're buying weekly groceries, for instance, or fueling your car, paying for public transport, your phone bill, etc., and you've already have the money, then using credit cards and paying them off can be really good. Especially if you pay them off immediately, it's a good move. But importantly, if you cannot afford to pay for something outright in cash in the first place, then you probably shouldn't be buying it with debt either. There are a few exceptions, in my opinion, and they're the big ones, right? We'll talk about these later, like property, but also things like healthcare, education, income-generating assets, anything that generates income, and sometimes even insurance, anything that's going to make you more money. But for everything else, I would say save first and then spend later. Let's put in some safety guardrails. So avoid debt consolidation loans unless the behavior is fixed and the rate or the term, that's the length, is clearly better, so it's lower. There's no origination fee surprises. Another thing is avoiding retirement account loans or tapping investments unless you make a clear disclosed trade-off. Maybe you're thinking about doing that because you're saving taxes. So that's something I do, but it's a bit more advanced, because essentially you're going to be losing the compounding of this. So unless you're a super investor, I would avoid tapping into your retirement accounts and taking loans from them. Do not take payment holidays that capitalize interest, right? That builds up, unless it prevents default and you've got a very solid, concrete reset and restart plan. So if you've gone through these sections, you've now got an incredibly crystal clear view of where you stand. And now you can look ahead with confidence and a clear direction, especially now that we have a strategy for clearing the runway. Look, we're about to see the fun part, how we can take off, right? The runway is clear, let's take off. Let's get into our jet. We don't even have to own a jet. Let's just play it. Let's imagine we have a nice private jet right now. We're going to get into that jet, we're going to take off, but the runway now is becoming clearer and clearer, as at least we have a strategy to make it clear. So moving on to the next bit puts everything else into place. Now, goal setting is important because our financial ship, it needs a destination. Otherwise, you're wandering aimlessly and you can make poor decisions about money. Now, where you put your money in terms of savings or investments, it depends on when you need it. Money depends on timing. You could be putting it in savings accounts or investment accounts when you invest it, let's say, in stocks or bonds. But first, you need to write your goals. And you can and you should take a break for just 5 minutes right now. Pause the video, grab a phone, a pen, paper, spreadsheet, an app, whatever you like. Write down your goals, every goal you have for yourself. Give yourself permission to dream. You will never surpass your highest goals, so set them high. If you want $10,000, don't put down $1,000. If you truly want 1 million, don't write down 100,000. It could be that you want to travel to Greece this year, like me. Maybe you want to start a business next year, like I want with another business. Or to buy foreign rental units for the year after, like I do. Whatever it is, don't matter what people say. Do not let the naysayers intervene. And don't let anything deter you. When you were a child, you dreamed. So bring out your inner child. We overestimate what we can do in 1 year, but we underestimate what we can do in a decade or even a few years. So just pause the video while you're writing these things down. Now, by the way, the next thing to do is right next to each goal, write down a rough idea of when you want to achieve it by. Be clear, be detailed. Goals must have timelines. Goals without timelines are just not real. They're just wishes, right? They need to be made real. Make them real. I want such and such by such and such a time. I want X by time Y. It sounds like a small step, but it's incredibly important because the when of your goal changes the how of how you should manage your money. Now, the timeline matters so much because the longer the time frame, the more powerful your money becomes. So for instance, a 20-year goal, right? 20 years from now, my goal is to retire, or maybe send your children or future children. I don't have kids right now, but send your future children to college. This could be a long-term goal. And so with this, you've one of the most powerful forces on your side, time. So backed by over a century and a half of financial history, the Standard & Poor S&P 500s, that's the top 500 companies by market size, over the past 150 years, so looking at data from 1871 to today, 2025 monthly, anyone who held their money for a minimum of 16 years, just 16, never lost their money. At 32 years, it was at least a 4% return. Pretty good, always. Now, even if we go back to that 16 year where you never lose your money, in that particular case, almost 95%, 94.4% to be accurate, 94.4% of the time, your returns were at least 4%. The worst, you might have guessed it, was the Great Depression, that stock market crash of 1929, right, and then the early 30s. And if you think about holding it for a lower period of time, like something like a 10-year hold, 97%, in fact, over 97% of the time, you would not lose money. And 87%, a little bit higher, you would actually get at least 4%. The worst time was the Great Depression. Also, there was the thing called the dot-com era in the late 2000s, early 2000s, right? The late 90s, early 2000s, around that time, 2000, 2001. If you bought it around the height, just before the dot-com crash, the internet bubble crashed, and you sold at the low just after the next recession, the Great Recession, otherwise known as the global financial crisis 08-09. So if you bought around 2000 or 99 and you sold around 2009, 2010, then yeah, you're in a little bit of mess at that point. But it's only that time. Now, in a 5-year hold, okay, if you held it just for 5 years, this starts to change a little bit now. At 5 years, almost 90% of the time, you're positive, or not negative anyway. And almost 3/4 of the time, you're getting at least 4% returns. Now, this is, the worst times, if you're looking at 5-year intervals, well, they go right back to the start when the market was really wild in like 1871. Right, also 1887, 1890 kind of time. There's also the 1902, 1907. 1907, there was a great crash, and that led to the creation of the Federal Reserves. That was a big crash time. World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, around Nixon's era, the dot-com bubble, as well as the Great Recession, global financial crisis. Now, if you only hold it for just 1 year, then yeah, it's not quite tossing a coin like some people say. That actually, 72.57% of the time, you would not lose money. So you're much more likely not to lose money. And 65.64% of the time, that's almost 2/3, you're going to be getting at least 4%. It's wild on a given year. You could lose a lot, you could make a lot, but the odds are still somewhat in your favor. But definitely it is, I agree, it's very unpredictable. 1 to 5 years, usually positive, not guaranteed. 5 to 10 years, if you're holding it for 5 to 10 years, mostly positive. 12 to 20 years, honestly, historically, it has never been negative as long as you hold it at least 16 years. 20 years, if you're holding it like absolutely always. Even 12 years since 1972, it's been positive. So the longer you go out, the more likely it is you get positive returns. But even at 5 years, you've got, 50% of a chance of getting 10% returns. Isn't that crazy? And you've got 3/4 of a chance of getting at least 4%. And 90% of the time, you won't lose. Now let's look at a 30-year holding period and assume that we invest $100,000 initially. The 4% return will turn $100,000 into $324,000, or 3.2 times the principal. If you can double your return, get the stock market average around 8%, that jumps it up to $1,006,000, or basically a 10.1 tenfold increase. Now, if you got 10% returns, this is going to turn it into 1.745 million, or a 17.4x return. So look, value your money. Make your money work hard for you, and let it do what it's historically done to get you to your goals faster. What if your goal is 5 years? So you don't have 30 years to save and invest. Example could be moving to a bigger place or starting your own business. So looking at returns over any 5-year period, as we've seen, the data still holds 90% of 5-year periods, the market delivered positive returns. And over 50% of cases, double digits. There were exceptions, such as if you bought 2004, you sold after the crash in 2009, that was the global financial crisis, there you'd lose about 3% per year. The returns over any 1-year period paint a completely different story. Unpredictable returns, and you just don't know what it would be in 1 year. You could make a lot, like a fortune, or you could lose a lot. You just don't know. For 1 year, although 73% or almost 3/4 of the time you make money, you could lose a lot in 1 year. In fact, you would have lost more than half during the worst year in the 1930s Great Depression. That's like more than 50% wipeout. So if you have a short-term goal of 1 to 2 years, the market is probably not the right place for your money. What I feel if you have, let's say, 1 year, usually you want to hold that in something like a high-yield savings account. More than one, like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, even 5 years, think about something like bonds, something like the VBTLX. If it's something that's longer than 5 years, that's where you want to think about the index fund, something like the VTSAX, stock market. And this circles back to why a clear timeline matters, because once you know when you want something to happen, you can pick the right strategy for that goal. Short term, so like 0 to 1, maybe even 2 years, think about your emergency funds. You're thinking about goals like going on holidays, holiday gifts, putting down a house deposit, making sure it's safe. You want to make sure that it's accessible. So probably not stocks, they're not that safe. Medium term though, like 1 or 2 years all the way to 5 years, maybe you're thinking of getting a bigger home. Maybe it's some school fees for children a few years from now. Maybe it's that you want to start a big business in a while. Maybe there's just these one-day dreams, right? They're not way out in the horizon, but you're not like the next year or two necessarily. So there you want to have a situation there now where money should work harder, because the chance of you riding out the ups and downs of the market and beating inflation even, just protecting your money's future value, that improves massively. So for instance, you could keep the money there in investment accounts that are matching your country's tax rules, as well as keeping in mind to go along with your own individual personal comfort with risk. We'll cover that in a coming section. Long term though, like when you're thinking, 5 more years, at least 5 years, you're thinking like retirement, like true wealth building, future freedom. Give money time and space to grow. Seriously. You want to be investing there. You must be investing at that point, or else you're leaving a lot of money on the table. So this section is where we've written out our goals to achieve and a time frame of years to get there. Short, medium, long-term goals depend on the outline just given. Next, we're going to look at one of the most actionable sections, because we're going to turn our plans done so far into reality, where everything starts to feel real. Look, up to now, we figured out where you stand and what you want, but now we're going to turn this into a practical plan, one that actually helps you build the life that you're aiming for. So in section 4, building an action plan, this is really budgeting. I know it's a bad term, but budgeting is not a leash. It's not a collar. It's not a restriction. It's just like the steering wheel or a rudder or a helm on a ship. It sounds restrictive. It sounds maybe like tedious, but when you understand why you're doing it, it can be one of the most freeing things you can ever do with your money. The best way to convey or to explain it is the boat analogy. First, we're going to choose the destination. Your goals are the ports, the harbors that you want to reach. We've just outlined the goals, which is step 1, or the map. Think of different destinations. So now we want as our second step a 12-month passage plan forecast, like checking charts, the tides, the weather, the seasons for the year, so that we can see storms, maintenance stops, and the best wind. Now, we're going to look out ahead, maybe with binoculars or telescope, in this second step. Looking forward and out at the sea ahead of us is getting you to your goals, right? That sea is going to get you to your goals. So that route you're taking, the 12-month forecast forces you to look beyond the current week or month. When you can see your entire year ahead or 12 months, you'll see patterns and opportunities that you'd otherwise miss, like bad weather, storms, seasons at sea, before you run into them. For instance, in finance, taxes that are due, annual insurance renewals, holidays, destination weddings. I'm going to destination weddings soon. So the third step is monthly logbook checks. So watch the compass and correct the course if you start to drift off, right? So here, again, it's like watching the navigation counter dashboard with the speedometers, the fuel levels, the rev counters, the computer lights to show for drifting off course, right? Is the boat keeling, etc. You need the 3 steps. With these 3 steps, the destination, the passage forecast, and the logbook checks, right? The passage forecast is every, for the 12 months, a whole year, whereas the logbook checks are checking in monthly. Money stops feeling restrictive and starts taking you exactly where you meant to go. So here we're going to concentrate on step 2, the 12-month passage forecast that shows us what happens if we keep going on this path. Take what you already know from the last 12 months, your income, your spending, and project or budget it forward 12 months. Now that we know what your year looks like, or we can predict it, you can start doing something in advance about it and possibly course correct. You can redirect more money to savings, right, to get your financial freedom there quicker, and investment too. First, by tweaking your spending, cutting it down a little bit so you can allocate money ahead of time. Pay yourself first. We'll talk about this later, but rather than happening by just sheer luck. Hope is not a strategy. I love hope, but it's not a strategy. Ask strategic questions. Can you put more money into repaying debt and increasing savings? Can your spending be cut on items that you know are coming up? Sounds odd, but you could save money if you could cut the spending somehow. For things you know you'll have to pay, which spending categories specifically can you reduce? Focus on necessities, starting with fixed and some variables like living and household items such as groceries, as other things can be more volatile. I mean, you can reduce them, but these can have a big impact over 12 months. And we're going to go into detail next on some easy ways or tricks that can make a big difference. See if you can reduce your utilities, like ring around. Maybe your phone, your internet. This may sound controversial, but if you're starting out, is an expensive phone with a plan a must? You can get really cheap phones that cost next to nothing to run and give you about 80% of the results. So as an example, for just $0 a month, you heard that right, you can get a VoIP over cellular or Wi-Fi, like Text Now, Free Flex, unlimited talk and text in the Text Now app. Now this is with essential data for access for like selected apps, or with paid add-ons if you want broader data. Now mind when you're looking at these things, mind the 911 limitations with app-based calling. Now if you buy a SIM once, then you pay $0 monthly. That's all you got to do. Buy the SIM card once, then pay $0 a month. That's great if you mainly call or text and you live on Wi-Fi. Most places you go to these days have Wi-Fi. You have Wi-Fi likely in your home. Your car possibly has GPS. An entire hour of Google Maps, even if you had no GPS in your car, an entire hour of Google Maps driving would barely go through 3 to 5 megabytes. And that's probably 6 cent to 10 cent with a pay-as-you-go. So we're moving up now. Something like Tello pay-as-you-go. Or you could do what we did in the 2000s, all the way back then in the 90s, and use an actual map that you can still get today at a gas station for a few bucks, right? And hear me out on this one. It will sharpen your mind. In fact, neuroscience studies on London, UK, black cab drivers, right? They're the taxi drivers, who learn the knowledge, right? This was a big, big test they had to pass to basically become a taxi driver. They had to know everywhere in London. Studies have shown that they strengthen their hippocampus, right, for spatial tasks in their brain. It's bigger, it's expanded over time, right? It's increased with the years and training. So the studies have shown that they've got better spatial memory and evidence on the adult mind plasticity, that we can still grow even as adults in a sense. As opposed to if you have a habitual use, I've noticed this myself, like habitually using GPS. When I first came to America, I was using GPS because GPS was standard by then. And I realized very quickly that I didn't know hardly how to get to work or go to my favorite places because I was using GPS all the time. Whereas in my home country of Ireland, I grew up without GPS. I still know Dublin like the back of my hand. I don't need GPS. And today, some of my friends recently commented that they were thinking I had superpowers, that I could drive around Dublin with no GPS, right? Because that was the way I just know spatially. Like, you know your way around your house, right? Like you can find your way out of your house. So you can learn this. It's a skill. It's something that I know some of the girls might be saying like, oh, why doesn't the guy ask her question? Because guys didn't have GPS thousands of years ago. They had to hunt for wild animals. They had to know their way home, right? Like there weren't people around that they could ask because they probably would do certain things to them if they asked questions, right? So men were developing these skills, and men and women can develop these skills. It's a skill that you can develop by not asking. Try that for a while. See how far you get. You might suck originally, but if you don't use that, your hippocampus actually, they found studies, right, that if you use GPS all the time, that will lead to poorer spatial memory and less hippocampal engagement. And also, if you actually do not use GPS, but try to be like a taxi driver, that actually lowers Alzheimer's mortality, at least observational, not causation. But they have some correlation evidence on this, that there's a lower Alzheimer's mortality rate from less reliance on GPS. Back to phones. You'll have to choose a phone and a plan that suits your use, but don't overestimate your use. Some are very cheap monthly options. And honestly, one major tip from the elite is to ditch the smartphone because you'll get so much time back. Like I know one famous trader and he's got a phone with only about 40 contact spots. So you have to be very important to get on his top 40 list. But when you're not constantly checking your IG, I mean, you know this yourself, like your socials, your YouTube or your email, you'll be surprised how much time you have and how much better you may feel. Also, as people start to get the message that you're not constantly contactable, your stress levels really go down. This is what I've found. I've done detoxes on this, and it was a massive stress reliever. I went from like the super productive, like it was part of my identity, like, to be super productive, always on call, day or night, for short-term rentals, 3-minute response times to emails, like checking my email maybe once. Now I'm just checking my email just once or twice a day. And sometimes just twice a week. In fact, I take certain days off. My productivity has actually shot through the roof, as I could focus now on deep work that matters and had much better quality of life improvements here with my family and friends. Now, for the internet, you want a really good hack? My aunt asked her neighbor if it's okay to use their Wi-Fi. She lives alone and there's really only one or two devices that use internet, so she pays essentially $0 or euros, because it's over in Europe, for Wi-Fi, as she lives on one side of a twin or a semi-detached house, as they call them in Ireland. And she doesn't use the internet for much, other than like WhatsApp calls, email, basic stuff. Now, some of you may feel that these things are musts, but compare the packages that you have with other providers to negotiate and to ensure that you're getting the best deal. I have. Call and ask. It's likely that they'll do something for you, as they'd prefer keeping you as a customer than have you leave for a competitor. Like, I did this myself. I like teaching from practical experience, not just theory. So I did this with my phone point plan at one point, in fact, multiple points. And honestly, every year I do this now with everything. I save hundreds, if not thousands. Some years I save thousands. I have lowered my internet bill. I've packaged like my phone with my internet. I've had multiple properties, so I've been multiple internet, etc. I've just rang up every year to like negotiate, like, please, can I come? I'm going to leave the service unless they reduce it, because usually internet companies come in really cheap, and over a few years, suddenly you find your expenses have doubled because they were on an initial plan, right? So you can keep going back to that plan. Sometimes they don't really help you if you stay there for too long. I've also done this with lower phone bills, right? By coming off and saying, look, this other company's offering me a lower bill, and all of a sudden my existing company, when they think you're going to go, they'll lower your bill. It really does work. I've done this for utilities. Sometimes you'll get massive discounts. Recently, I cut my cost by about 60% because I switched the actual energy providers. So lowering my utilities, lowering my insurance. I'm always ringing around for insurance companies every year or so. I look around and see, is there any way that we can actually lower the insurance? I have saved thousands of dollars. Even in one particular year, I remember, where I saved thousands of dollars. My parents used to do this. My mother does this. This is just a standard thing over there. Now, by the way, there's other utilities as well, right? But just try your best. You will be surprised. It's a massive way you can cut back. Groceries or supermarket shopping, you can reduce spending by looking at different stores. Now, for instance, you could be buying staples, so things that are going to last a long time, for instance. When there are discounts, you can look at other different shops, maybe swap shops, right? So it could be that you're going to Walmart, maybe Costco for the bulk discounts, the wholesale, etc., rather than Whole Foods or Whole Paycheck, right? Aldi, we have Lidl also over in my home country. Just looking at these things, once you go off brands, you can really save a lot of money. Now, this is one where I'm a little bit on the fence, because your time is your most valuable asset, so you don't want to do too much where you're losing your time. So there's two schools of thought here. So one is to like do everything for yourself, cook for yourself, clean for yourself, save a fortune. This would be like the Graham Stephan way almost, right? Some people like him, like saving a lot of money, etc. Maybe Dave Ramsey, etc. And that really works, and that's what I have done, and I still do to a certain extent. But if your time is valuable and you're capable of making a lot of money and you're a very hard worker, this is a rare approach. After tax, by the way, you have to think about the after tax, how much you make after tax. Because you might make $100, but if you're only making 50, then you got to use 50 after tax. In that same time, it may make sense to follow the advice of someone like Alex Hormozy, but now we're talking about those that are very high income, very high skill. Now he would suggest, getting others to shop for you, others to cook for you, clean for you, etc., by eating out, for instance, or ordering deliveries. We're not talking about a fancy restaurant. You can get more things like Honeygrow, Chipotle, these kind of stores. They make decently good quality food, but it's going to save you a lot of time if you're thinking about all the time you're going to shop, going to cook, etc. Now, that's only for those who are actually going to use that time to make a lot of money. If you're, a hustler, a grinder, etc., you're making a lot of money, then maybe compare what you're actually making after tax for those hours. You might save some extra hours and be able to do that extra side hustle if you're really a hard worker, okay? I used to cheap out here, and I still control my spending, but for just a few dollars, I now get food delivered and use credit card rewards to essentially get food deliveries where the food is almost cooked or pretty much already cooked and hot and ready to go, or it's been shopped for already. So I'm saving hours. Now, my hourly rate is super high, so this makes sense. You could think about things like DoorDash, Uber Eats, Walmart Plus, Instacart. I love Instacart. Lyft. Now, I'm not getting, currently when I'm recording this, I'm not getting any commissions or kickbacks from this. This is just my experience. I get a lot back with credit cards that I've used. Like I use Chase Sapphire Reserve when your credit is high enough and you're traveling as much as I have, or Amex Platinum too. So I get a lot of the deals back with these cards. Now, one quick tip. Do you need a more expensive gym? Or can a discount one work just as well? When I was a relatively poor college student in my 20s, about 15 years ago, I used to pay easily 200 euros a month, so more in dollars, with the actual gym. I also had trainers. But when I got into my first six-figure income, right, when I started really earning, I actually switched to just between about 15 and 25 bucks a month for much of the last decade. Yeah, I've had some personal trainers once or twice, but for the last few years, mostly I know what I need to do, and I pay a lot less by looking at these apps where I get training programs. You can save a fortune. It may not seem like a huge difference, but if it's something that you're using regularly, it's going to stack up with time. And you may want to go to the more expensive gym. Look, if you want to socialize with affluent people, make connections, etc., fine. I get it. I hear that. But be sure you have a good reason and understand the trade-off. Planet Fitness, I use it all the time. There's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, you're not going to get your massive... if you want to be an Olympic power builder, go to somewhere like LA Fitness. You'll get most of the thing there. But there's still... These discount gyms are way cheaper. I've also worked it out that... paying gym membership is actually cheaper than buying your own gym, unless you are trying to save the time it takes to travel back and forth to the gym. I hear that argument. That's a good argument. But the quality of stuff that you're going to make at home, the cost, and then maintaining it, the lack of variety, even the socializing, getting up and getting out, there's a lot to be said about going to a discount gym. That's just who I am right now, but you do you, right? These are my little thoughts. But again, understand the trade-off. Make sure you have a good reason. If it's going to help you grow, great. The good thing, though, about adjusting now after the forecast is that they're very targeted, because now you've got a reason. You know exactly what needs to shift. And when you know how much you need to invest, you can return to budget and tweak until you're happy with balancing short-term, so like the next 12-month spend, with long-term goals. Now, the step 3, or the third step, is monthly logbook check-ins. Here we're going to spot little changes like higher electric bills or internet phone bills, subscriptions, overspending on dinners out. We're going to catch and course correct while still easy to fix. I've noticed, for instance, sometimes my electric bills were very, very high. My internet went up a lot. Subscriptions, I was like, wait, I forgot that I even subscribed to this. Why am I subscribed to this? This is where we're going to fill in the holes. You can use a simple budget, as we've been seeing. Use whatever you like, but keep it simple. And for each item or each line item, ask yourself, do I need this? Can I live with less of it? Or can I get it cheaper? Now, there are many rules, but you just have to pick the one that suits you. Again, this all comes back to the savings muscle. I like to think of 4 muscles. The savings muscle is like your legs. I really think it's the first muscle you should learn. Controversial take, I know some people say, no, focus on the income. But I think savings muscle, look, when you're earning as much as you like, if your savings still suck, you're spending all of your money, right? If you haven't got that muscle down. Income muscle is probably the next most important, right? Because that's going to be earning. We'll talk about that again. And then after that, we're thinking about spending muscle, which we're going to get into now, the next topic. Spending muscle is really, because again, when you earn more, that's really powerful. That's going to, because you can only save to zero, whereas you can earn almost infinite, right? So you can earn a lot. So the saving is in between, right? But that's the difference. Now, the spending is actually getting the most for your bang for your buck. Because sometimes when you get too thrifty, too miserly, it can reduce your quality of living and those around you. And really with the kind of the spending muscle, it's learning how to spend to make your life happy. Like find what you like, etc. Cutting out certain things so that you can focus on the things you really like. Finding certain tweaks. And the investing is really about optimizing that difference. But we'll get to that shortly. Now, there's Senator Elizabeth Warren and her daughter Amelia's 50-30-20 rule, where you put 50% of your net income towards essentials, the musts, 30% towards fun, 20% towards your future, so saving or investing or paying back debt. Now, in terms of what's best for you, if you want a straightforward system for balancing spending and saving without tracking every single transaction, then that's great, right? That's a great system. Now, beyond the 50-30-20 rule, there's the envelope system. And this is where you put money in labeled envelopes, and once it's gone, you can't spend any money on that category. Now, you can do this with certain apps these days. You don't have to have a physical envelope. This is great for people who they want a hands-on approach and they struggle with impulse buying, impulse spending, impulse purchases using debit or credit cards. Now, another thing to think about is value-based budgeting. This starts by asking you to identify your core values. Like, what do you really care the most about? Family, travel, health, or education? I'm not here to judge. Then analyze your spending to see if it adds to or takes from these values. Intentionally redirect your money towards the categories that matter to you. This is great if you feel restricted by traditional budgeting and you just want a more purposeful, long-term approach to your money. Then there's zero-based budget. This intensively assigns a job to each dollar of income. So what you do is you list the take-home pay and you subtract expenses including savings and debt repayments, and any leftover money it must go towards a new category like debt payoff or extra savings. This is great if you want total control over your money, right? If that's the kind of person you are. Maybe you're a control freak, right? You're willing to meticulously track your spending. You want to know my favorite? My favorite is a thing called pay yourself first, or reverse budgeting, which prioritizes saving over spending. So here I decide percentage of my savings, that's what I want to save, and then I auto transfer to the savings, right, or the retirement accounts on my payday. I live on what's left. So this is great for me. Like, I used to struggle to save consistently, and I wanted to automate my path to building wealth. Now that it's on automation, like, that's the first thing that happens. I've got to figure out everything else, but my future is safe. So how to choose the right rule for you? To find your best fit, just start by asking yourself a few questions. So what are my goals? If saving is your main priorities, pay yourself first, like what I do, or even the 80-20 rule might be best. If your goal is to get a handle on all your spending, then maybe the zero-based budgeting is a good choice. What is my income like? Look, if your income is irregular, maybe you're an entrepreneur, for instance, then zero-based budgeting can help you budget the money that you have on hand each month. If your income is steady, on the other hand, maybe percentage-based rules, like the 50-30-20, they're maybe easier to implement. How much detail do you want? So if you prefer simplicity, the 50-30-20 rule, or pay yourself first is best. For detailed tracking, zero-based budgeting is ideal. Do you tend to overspend? If you struggle with impulse buys, I know a lot of us do, then the cash-based envelope system can provide powerful visual accountability. It's all about accountability, right? No matter which method you choose, the key is to find a system that you will actually stick with. Remember that these are guidelines, and you can always adjust or combine them to fit your unique financial situation. For me, honestly, I love to hit a specific dollar number of savings or investments. What is the maximum I can contribute towards my future? Because look, I'm a delayed gratification or future focused guy. Everything else adjusts to hit this. And I found over time that my sweet spot, by just covering my essentials and adjusting my fun until it was just barely sufficient, and my marginal utilities, right, the extra oomph that I got, the extra enjoyment I got from spending and saving were the same. Because I used to value saving so much, I would save huge amount. I would cut my spending down until the point where, like, okay, an extra dollar is saving, it's just like not that much valuable, but I'm really like living on thin air. Okay, that's where the equal utilities came in. It's essentially the pay yourself first approach. You know, you want to combine the 12-month passage plan forecast with monthly logbook check-ins, creating a practical roadmap guiding you consistently towards your financial goals. And by the way, if you're short on time or energy to build the spreadsheets or the systems from scratch, then you can use mine. They're ready to use, and they all come with the Wealth Builders Toolkit, from paycheck to financial freedom. This is an online toolkit designed to give you everything you need, from the step-by-step video guides, calculators, tools, spreadsheets, to take your finances from chaos to complete 100% crystal clarity. Now, others may focus more on financial well-being, but this one goes to the next level. Mine are geared towards true wealth creation. It's not just spreadsheets, but it's a complete financial decision-making system. What you've seen, or the glimpses so far, is about 10% of what is included in the toolkit. So inside there's a full roadmap that takes you through goal setting, savings plans, debt strategies, investing foundations, automation, and much, much more. No long, tedious written guides, but short, digestible, binge-worthy, I guess, mini video series. It's designed to give you total clarity without any of the overwhelm that you might be used to. Practical tools, real-world tested strategies, and guided frameworks built by someone who actually went from $0 to multi-millionaire. This is exactly what I wish I had when I was first figuring out my finances. And look, you know, it's so frustrating that to create a financial plan for yourself, or with the help of a financial advisor, that it's so expensive. Like, I wanted to build something that would take you through the process so it would empower you. So look, you can create your own financial plan, understand your own at a fraction of the investment of what it would usually cost. Like, I just say that, you know, give a man a fish and he'll eat for the day, but teach a man to fish and he'll eat for life. So I hope you enjoy it and it changes your life as it did mine. And if you want to check it out, then there's a link in the description below, or you can go to profmichaelcurran.com/wealth-builders-toolkit, and you'll see an early bird access code on the website at the moment for the first few hundred people who can use the code and get a huge discount off the toolkit. Section 5 is automate and accelerate. And I wanted to cover something that rarely gets covered in finance, but it's my secret sauce. And I honestly apply it to every aspect of my life. It's like a thing that it happened to me during my PhD years. And I want everyone, whether you went to college or not, to get this. It's a mindset. And it's a set of actions or tools that I personally implement. It lowers my stress, and it'll set you up for success. With it, you can actually achieve success at an unparalleled level. Remember when we said we need to dream bodaciously, or big, giant dreams, right? Like when you were children, like you want to be an astronaut, like you wanted to be Superman, right? Well, here's how you can do this on autopilot. I know it sounds unrealistic, but let me show it to you. First, it's important to set up the payments on your debt to automatically cover the minimum balances. No more missing due dates and incurring extra interest or fees. Ask your banks, credit card companies, or lenders to help you set up automatic transfers that continue indefinitely. Make them earn their money. They're supposed to show you how to do it. You can even do this for rent payment, for mortgage payments, subscriptions, honestly, everything, so that your credit never takes a hit and you never miss anything. You can always pay more manually, but you don't want the distraction. Like, I once had to do this for a landlord, and he looked at me sideways, thinking that I had a problem mailing him checks. But why would I buy envelopes, stamps, and rely on the chance that the mail would even get to him on time, intact, along with the headache? And what if I was sick and I just couldn't post it? Other things, right? We're in the 21st century. By the way, setting bills to auto-pay is great, but just like we spoke of in the last section, the one downside to automation that I must mention, a health warning here, is that you still need to check in to see if you're paying too much or can live without some things that you're paying. Maybe you've got 2 gyms, you only need 1 gym. Maybe you've got subscriptions you forgot that you signed up for that you don't need or you don't use. And when it's automatic, it comes out easier. So you want to make it more friction, right, when you've got things like that. When it's automatic, it's going to hurt less, so it can slip through the cracks, unless you still do your occasional check-ins, right? Those monthly logbook check-ins. Monthly is great to start off with, quarterly for some that are super busy, but definitely annual at the very least. Even if you take nothing away, just check once a year, that will change your life. A second quick win is to set up overdraft protection. That's what it's called, with a linked savings transfer, so that you never eat those fees ever again. Call your bank or open an app and say, please link my saving to my checking for automatic overdraft transfers. Opt me out of fee-based overdraft or courtesy pay on debit ATM. Turn on low balance and large withdrawal alerts. And if possible, sweep at a dollar amount, let's say $100 threshold, instead of only at $0. Also, ask your banks, do they charge a per transfer fee? Many banks do this for free or for a flat fee. It is far cheaper than overdraft penalties, and it removes the mental load. We just don't like that load, right, of timing all the payments. Now, this is different from an overdraft. That's like a line of credit where it's going to charge you interest. So you're going to keep a small cushion in savings. This is like a safety net, not a spending pass. You want to set it once and funnel every dollar of avoided fees straight to your highest interest rate debt if you're an avalanche person, or put it into your minimal balance if you're a snowball person. So your payoff and your freedom timeline moves faster. You want to bring that future to the present. And by the way, you can always use a separate debit card for fun spending so that you don't cross over your budget. That's a great tip I found a few years ago. Third, automate your savings and investment. Automatically pull your money from your bank checkings account when you get paid to go straight to your investment brokerage account, which we'll talk about soon. Also do the same for any savings accounts you have. For instance, you have online savings account, then think about it like taxes, right? Like you cry, you scream, you hit something, like a little 2-year-old toddler that is screaming. But at the end of the day, you got to pay your taxes, right? And you try to figure out the rest of your life. So why not just pay yourself first and worry about the rest later? Now, on the investment side, it's also easy to set up recurring investments, usually in dollar amounts, for instance, with mutual funds, which we'll discuss and get to all that good stuff soon. But, sometimes you can use it in percentages, for instance, with company-based retirement accounts. Again, we'll cover that really soon. The key thing is that you want your bank to do this work. You want your bank to do this recurring every month. Now, I've little story here. I've had one long-term tenant whose bank was instructed to do this for her rent. I gave the actual information to her to give to the bank so that she didn't miss a payment. And of course, they followed my instructions. but they didn't follow all of my instructions. They did this once rather than to set it recurring, right? And then they did the same thing with her. She was using Venmo at one point, and she was charged a lot of interest and fees and was almost missing payments for the first 6 months, despite not having any money issues. She was loaded. She simply had tech issues, and the system was designed to profit and to prey on those that are vulnerable. So I had to ring on her behalf. It makes me mad, and I'm sorry that I'm getting emotional, but it just makes me mad how the system takes advantage of some people. So I had to ring on her behalf and argue with the banks to get her fees given back to her and to get them forgiven. And you heard that right. You can and you should negotiate with your banks. Be confident but polite. Say that you would like rather than ask if. Don't be arrogant. Don't be timid. Somewhere in between is ideal. Track your conversation and then be able to use it in the future. You know, on such and such a date, I spoke to employee X and they said this, right? When you know that you have your recording, the banks are much more willing to play ball with you. Ask for the name of the person and that you're talking to, right? And ideally their employee number. You don't want to be that annoying person, but you don't want to be a walkover. It's a fine line, but it works. In every area, I try to automate things. Reminders, scheduled emails, even with teaching at university, I'll create assignments that appear for my students and they disappear at the exact times on the exact dates. I have teams and systems where my short-term rental guests get codes sent to them that only work for certain times when they first check into their rentals and stop working after their checkout. They'll get house manuals at the right time. Everything is remotely automated so that my team can fix issues most of the time without having to even go near the properties. The same is true with people. Having the right A team, right, a really superstar team that can help you out. My life is so much less stressful as I've gone from being the cleaner, the maintenance person, the accountant, the tax person, the manager, the researcher, the teaching assistant, even at colleges, right? The research assistant, I guess, even the editor of these videos that you're watching right now. To gradually, I've outsourced and automated my life so I can accelerate it by focusing on my highest leverage plays. At the end of the day, systems rule and combat manual exhaustion and decision fatigue. Even Steve Jobs of Apple wore the same clothes, so he didn't suffer from decision fatigue. Now, people don't suffer because of the lack of willpower. That'll only get you so far. They suffer because of the lack of systems. Avoid stress by ever missing payments ever again. The solution is automation. This removes decision fatigue and builds wealth on autopilot, avoiding late fees and missed goals. Automation is the key to accelerating your wealth, and the number one way I've done so has been through the investment side, on the offense. Once the payments, that's the defense, were set up so that I didn't score any own goals in terms of debt. Set it once and it's done. Section 6, saving and investing. Now we're getting to the fun stuff and making money work for you. This is what it's all been about. Let's start with answering the question of where to save your money. Now, most people do this in banks, where they save their money, but they look at it the wrong way. So look, banks, they're not just storing your money safely, but they're using it to lend to house buyers, to those who wish to start businesses, and to those who want to finance things like cars, or even companies, right? So they charge those borrowers a lot more than they pay you as a saver. And the interest rate difference between what they charge borrowers and what they pay savers is called the net interest spread. Or you could think of this loosely as the bank profit, at least before their operating costs, credit losses, when they don't get their loans repaid, etc. Now, the loan rates that the borrower pays could be 7%, but the saving rate that you, as the saver, get may only be 1%. So the bank takes the difference of 6% as its gross profit. Now, it's important to shop around for bank rates, else you're just handing extra profit to banks for free. So you should keep as much as you can. Compare rates. Now, I personally love bankrate.com. Use independent sites like that, not your current bank's marketing page, because they're trying to sell you on their bank. And think of what you need. Now, you may want access to your money at any time. This is called liquidity. Savings or online savings like high yield savings. Here, we're thinking about app transfers. There's no real checkbook. But you could use money market deposit accounts. There you do have an ATM, right? Teller machine you can write checks, insured, just like the online high yield savings. There's also money market funds. Now, this takes a bit longer, usually 1 or 2 days, not too long, but they're not insured, right? That's not insured. Now, if you're happy locking away your money for a little while, then think about things like certificates of deposits, or CDs, or what sometimes is called savings bonds or notice accounts in some other countries. Now, honestly, I've found, in the US at least, high yield savings that are quite liquid. These beat CDs, right, or certificates of deposit, or at least they pretty much match them. And if there's any difference, it's usually tiny. So, what's the point in keeping it there for 6 months or a few years in a CD? Now, in some countries, you have things called notice accounts. They sometimes require, things like 60 or 90 days notice. CDs, or certificates of deposits, they're typically things like 3 months all the way to 5 years. The most popular tend to be around about 12 months to 24 months. That's about a 1 or 2 year. Now, CDs, they just may not be right for your emergency fund if you need the money, right? If you need rapid access. But I think it's still fine, as you just lose the interest if you pull out early. Another thing to consider is a thing called government Series I savings bond. You can get these from treasurydirect.com. They let you buy up to $10,000 US per person per calendar year, but also up to an extra $5,000 more if you get it through a federal tax refund. You must hold them, though, at least 12 months. And if you cash out within the first 5 years, you forfeit the last 3 months of interest. Now, after 5 years, there's no penalty. So if your spending is, let's say, 1 to 2 years out, even up to 5 years, you might want to consider Treasury or T-bills. They're usually 4 to 52-week maturities, and you can buy them again through treasurydirect.gov. You can buy them also through brokerages or even some online banks, and even ladder them, so stagger them out. So if you need something, let's say, buy it every 4 weeks. If you want to keep buying 4 weeks things like that, or buy like a 52-week thing every month or so. That way it's going to be due. The next one's going to be due. 52 weeks, buy another one a month later, so that one becomes due the next month. So that way you're not waiting all 52 weeks, right, for each one. So staggering or laddering is one little thing above and beyond this video, but consider staggering, looking into laddering if you're interested in doing that. I personally don't do that. I find that it's easy just to use online savings. You get a pretty good return, pretty good rates, everything. The tax differential is very, very slight. And by the way, if you're watching this and you're not an American person, you're not living in America, etc., you're living somewhere else, you're out of the system, consider interactive brokers for access. By the way, you can't get the actual Series I government bonds, but there are other things you can get into. You can get into things like the T-bills, in particular Treasury bills. That would be kind of the way to go if you were living abroad. There are other things you can do, but if you are living abroad, or you're in Europe, European watching this, or somewhere else, it might be worth a looking into high yield savings money market deposit accounts, or treasury money market funds that now offer competitive yields. It's not just traditional banks, but online banks and even investment platforms are increasingly offering these competitive cash accounts. Now, I don't like saying specific interest rates because this video would age really badly, right? Even before this video is finished, the rates will change. Now, European traditional banks, the rates there are painfully low. European high street rates are still pretty thin, but marketplaces and neobanks, they've shaken things up. An example would be like, Raisin for shopping insured deposits across the European Union banks. There's also Revolut and N26 or Bunk for insured in-app savings. There's also Trade Republic or Scalable for interest on cash balances. So if you're comfortable with money market funds, then Wise Interest is another route. Not a bank deposit, so protection differs and you should check which deposit guarantee applies, the country, any fees or tiers, and also just note that the rates are variable, they can change. Newer platforms offer attractive returns rather than just lower, boring returns, as they've got much fewer overheads. These online banks, they're not brick and mortar, unlike the traditional banks, right? So they can pass more of their profit margin onto you as a customer. Like you walk into a main high street bank, your Bank of America's, your Wells Fargo's, etc., and it looks beautiful, and you got all the nice brickwork, and they got all the nice places, and this is nice. Yeah, how are they doing that? They're making profit, a lot of profit, right? So the online banks, they're not spending on bricks and mortar and nice foyers and nice receptions, right? So they can pass a lot more of the profit margin onto you, the client, you, the consumer, you, the customer. So now that we're done with savings in terms of what to look out for, where to keep your savings, at what point do you stop saving and start investing? The million-dollar question I hear from students in my courses is when to start investing. And by investing, what I mean here is actually like putting your money really to work. It's not necessarily in, mostly insured places that, they give you some interest rate when you're saving, but not a huge interest rate. Investing is typically where you're subject to risk. It is not guaranteed. So it could be that you're investing in real estate, it could be investing in stocks, investing in alternative assets like gold, etc. So the million-dollar question I hear from students is when to start investing. Quite literally, waiting too long can cost you massively. So it is actually a million-dollar question. Here, I'm going to give you a clear roadmap balancing protection and growth. So step one, we're going to need a starter emergency fund by saving 1 month's safety net or 1 month of expenses for breathing room so that you can sleep at night. Just enough to breathe, not a fully funded emergency fund, just a first line of defense. Look, if you aren't making baller money, like maybe you're making less than $20,000 per year, then try to save just $500, right? 500 quid is fine. If you're making more than $20,000 a year, then you might want to bring that up to $1,000. It's likely that you're spending more than that per month. So you want to try first just to get it to that amount, 500 or 1,000. Now, an accident, like new brakes, tires for your car, it's more of an inconvenience or a headache rather than a financial disaster. Step two. Now, while this might be controversial, and we're going to go into more details when we discuss investing, but before we get into step three, if your company offers something like an employer match, then take it before step three. We'll go into details soon. I just wanted to flag it for timing purposes. If your employer plan is dollar for dollar up to, let's say, for instance, 5%, then if you put 5% of your gross salary in, the employer adds an extra 5%. This is like free money. This is on top of your income. It's not part of your gross salary, right? They just give you, if that's $100,000 you're making, you put 5,000 away, the employer gives you an extra 5,000 as if you were earning 105,000. And again, it's tax-free, so it just comes in. Well, that's like you put in 5, the employer gave you an extra 5, now you got 10, so it's instantly 100% return on those matched dollars. So you contribute $1, your employer adds $1. Now, in some cases, it could be like 50 cents per dollar, let's say up to 6%. I mean, even still, you're getting half an extra, right? So if it was $5,000 you put in, they give you an extra $2,500. That's an instant 50%. That kind of risk-free boost almost always beats any debt rate, unless, I don't know, you're borrowing from the mafia or something. Like, you know, if it's more than 100% or even 50%, most credit cards are in the 20%. Most of the high interest rate loans are in the double digits, but they're not in the triple digits, typically speaking. Not today, right? No, unless you're maybe like a Shakespearean play, Shylock from Merchant of Venice, right? What I'm telling you, but that's a different situation there. But two quick caveats, warnings for accuracy. So make sure you're what's known as vested. So this is like to know that how much you actually own if you were to leave right now. So hopefully you own 100% of that. Otherwise, they're keeping you on with golden handcuffs. So they're keeping you in the job. They're saying like you only get this if you stay on for this number of years, right? So if you plan to stay on for long enough, that's fine. But just make sure that you know that, so that you do get to keep the match. The second warning is just confirm that your plan has a year-end true up. So if you didn't contribute as much, you know, and suddenly at the end of the year you need to, sometimes they don't actually do the match at the end of the year if you didn't contribute enough earlier in the year and you suddenly were doing it later on. So check at least, do they reconcile at the end of the year? If they don't do this, just spread your contributions across the year so that you don't miss the match on later pay periods. Outside of emergency hardship or missing minimum payments, match first, then attack high interest rate debt. 100% return, you're only going to be paying 20%. I know it sounds ridiculous, right? 24%. That's a lot on debt, sure, but this is a 100% return. So controversial, I know, but match should be done before high interest. That's the smart default, mathematically. Step 3, pay high interest debt. Now the short answer here is to use 8% of a rate as your red line. Why? Because paying off $1 of 8% is risk-free, after-tax equivalent return. That's competitive with long-run stock returns, around about 10% nominal, 6, 7, maybe 8% real, and well above today's, let's say, 4% at the time of this video, 10-year Treasury yield. It is very difficult for investments to consistently outperform 8% after tax. So, you know, for instance, a 20% credit card debt, it's going to drain wealth faster than you can build it. Or a high interest personal loan does the same. So, look, paying them off is equivalent to giving yourself a guaranteed return equal to the interest rate, and you won't find any deal in the investing market that's similar to that. So, above 8%, prioritize paying. Again, capturing any employer match first, because that's a 100%, right? So just do that step 2 first. But more urgent, all debt that's higher than, let's say, 12%, that's urgent. Debt that's higher than 12%, urgent, like super urgent. Typical credit cards, personal loans, like I would say drop everything and avalanche it. So here, you know, the average credit card is typically 21 to 24%. High debt is what I would consider 8 to 11%. Here, you still want to attack it before you really go and start extra investing. Now, when it comes to middle debt, however, somewhere between about 5% and 7%, here we're going to use a hybrid or a split approach where you're going to put some of your money towards repaying it, but some of your money towards investing. And this split is going to depend on your tolerance for risk and your need for rapid, liquid access to cash. Honestly, if you've got something really low, like low debt, under 4 or 5%, if it's lower than that, I suggest just making the minimum payments and only modest amount of extra. Instead, I would focus on investing and having a cash buffer. So to summarize, if the rate you're paying is 8% or higher, that's high interest. So I would treat every extra dollar to that debt like a guaranteed 8% plus return. That's going to usually beat putting the same dollar in the market once you factor risk and taxes. Now, always consider after-tax return rates and special cases too. So, for instance, you may have a tax-deductible interest or even teaser rates before finalizing the plan, because you could get lower interest rates when you look at after tax, if you're getting tax write-offs for interest, etc. So they could actually drop a middle tier to a lower tier or a higher tier to a middle tier if you look at the after-tax rate, which is what you should look at, the after-tax rate. The tax-deductible, again, teaser rates, things like that, before you finalize your plan. Now, we're going to come back to that in a later section. Step 4. This is the fun part. We're going to build and invest together. Here's where things can start happening on multiple fronts. And this is where I think is best when you've just medium or low debt that's left. That's your 5 to 7% for middle debt or under 4 or 5 for low debt. Now, once you've got a starter emergency or 1 month of living expenses saved up, and you've paid off your high interest debt above 8%, and remember, you can start matching your employer in between those two stages, you can then start really on multiple fronts. Continue building that emergency fund towards your target and start investing for long-term goals simultaneously. Oh, and speaking of that emergency fund, time to talk about that. So that's usually 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. Longer if you've got more unstable income, you're the main breadwinner, you've got multiple dependents like children or your relatives that are depending on your money. Maybe you're highly risk averse, you don't like risk. You could go all the way up, usually up to about 2 years. That's typical. But honestly, everything over a year means that you are very, very, very risk averse. And you're probably leaving a ton of money on the table you're missing out on. So I would suggest at the very least that you question why you need more than 1 year's living expenses. So part of the reason I say this is don't forget, like, your emergency fund isn't there to make you that much money. It's there for emergencies. You will be having at some point other investments. You're going to be having investments that are going to actually make you money. So that's what's really going to accelerate you. And eventually you might have hundreds of thousands, if not more, in investments. You will. The average person on minimum wage over their lifetime, on minimum wage, makes more than $1 million. The median person in the US makes more than $3 million of income in their lifetime. So if you can put some of that away, you will have more. And if you will have more, you want to ask yourself, do I want to have years worth not making any money? Or is 1 year sufficient? Again, if you are going towards 2 year, like, really ask yourself that. If you're going to be above 2 years, maybe buying a bunker, lots of tins of beans. Okay, maybe that's your personality type. That's fine. But at least have a rationale. I beg you, even if you're just keeping money on the side, maybe you want to have gold, you want to the silver, bullets, you name it, right? I'm not bashing anyone. If you want to do that, that's you. You do you. But have a rationale. Be able to defend your position and say, this is why I'm doing it, right? This is why I believe that I don't want to have any money growing in the stock market or any money itself. I want to have years and years and years saved up, right? Like, at that point, you are sacrificing the future you for the present, right? And if something disastrous does happen, I'm not sure that it really will matter either way. If it's God forbid there's a nuclear, something like that, like a thermonuclear war, something like that. Like, at that point, you do have to ask yourself, all right, like, what really matters? Now you can do that. You can always convert wealth into income later. So, typically 3 months, building up to 6 as we're getting older, as we're having more dependence, as we're becoming more stable, maybe a year. But after that, like, you should have enough. At that point, you want to have high enough income, even passive income. You want to have wealth built up. So there's other things that can insure you, so to speak, or that can help out, rather than just all money that's in this pure safe form. But you do you. If you want a few years sleep well at night, that's fine. But you do have to rationalize it. This combined approach is more motivating than finishing one thing completely before starting another, right? Waiting. Because you see progress in different areas of your financial life simultaneously. Now, you could split it 50-50, like you could put 50% of savings/investment money towards emergency fund and the remaining 50% towards investing. This split depends on your comfort level and timeline. Again, if you're more comfortable with risk, you want to put more of that towards investing. If you're thinking like, you've got years and years and years into the future, maybe you want to do investing first because you think, well, it's going to actually like build up over time. It's totally up to you. As much as possible, though, try to keep trying to move forward, right? Just one foot in front of the other. And therefore, I would recommend simultaneously at the same time up to a point that you're comfortable with. So what about funding your goals? Now here, we're going to get real about your goals, like buying a house, sending your kids to college, becoming financially independent, retiring early. How much do you really need to reach these goals? The trick here is to work backwards. First, what's your goal? We've already done that. Number 2, how much will it cost? The numbers. What are the numbers? Number 3, when do you need that? Is it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, retiring or something? So in terms of looking at how much it will cost you, you can figure this out by using an online calculator or even some AI tool like ChatGPT. Again, it's not perfect, but a ballpark suffices. We don't have to be exact here. It's a ballpark. So let's look at a real example. Say you're wanting to get a home in 5 years when you plan on putting down, say, about $80,000. How much do you need to get there? So let's play with the numbers in the spreadsheet using our goal calculator here. Suppose that you could first put down, let's say over $1,000. Let's say a little bit more than that. Let's say $1,088.88 away per month. I know it sounds very specific, but just stick with me. Now that $1,088.88 at 8% a year in 5 years will be $80,000. In that case, a lump sum that you have initially to invest, it's unnecessary. Alternatively, however, you could put away just $886.11 a month if you started upfront with $10,000. If you start with more, like $30,000, then that monthly investment is only needing to be $480.49 a month. So we can see here the required monthly to hit our target or the required initial savings. Now you need less upfront or monthly if you can get a higher return. But this is hard, do not assume it. Or you can push the goal out longer. That's usually what happens. If it's unachievable in 5 years based on how much money you have up front and how much you can put away each month, then that's what you'll have to do. So the lump sum, the monthly necessary investment, the goal amount, the years to reach your goal, and the return, they're all flexible here, right, in the various columns in the spreadsheet. Now, a big goal could be to have $1 million in 35 years. Maybe you're 30 years old right now watching this and you retire when you're 65. Whatever age you are, just 35 years from now. Now, if you're getting a 7% return, by the way, that's a good post-after inflation return in the stock market. With an initial $10,000, you can invest about $492 a month to hit that goal. If your budget only allows you to save, let's say, $300 a month into that investment, then that you can see right there and then, oh, okay, I can only afford $300. I need to be hitting close to $500. I'm about $200 short. By the way, having investment gaps like this, like you're $200 short, that's totally normal. So don't be discouraged, because identifying this gap, it's a huge step forward. Knowledge is power. As instead of saving aimlessly, hoping you'll get there, you now know you got a concrete numbers, new numbers here to get there. And there's plenty of ways to bridge that gap. For instance, you could extend the timeline. You could optimize the return. We'll talk about that more soon. You could put down a higher lump sum to begin with, if that's what you want to do. And gradually, you can contribute more as your income and salary hopefully increase over your life. What matters is transforming vague financial goals. And now you can track progress and adjust and achieve your goals. Also, look up the tax rules for your country and start matching your investments with these rules. We'll talk about these briefly, but I talk about them much more in my Wealth Builders Toolkit, as well as in several earlier videos on my channel, like how to avoid taxes legally or how to legally pay no tax ever. This significantly boosts progress towards closing that gap, as your taxes are typically the number one thing, or close, that most people pay. And the less you pay, the more you keep. The bottom line is to know your numbers so that your dreams become plans. And plans have a funny way of becoming reality. Okay, I love this final part. It's probably one of my top favorite areas in finance. So here we're going to build your investment strategy. We're going to optimize your rate of return. But personal finance is personal because while mathematically it's true, investment strategies will yield different returns. But that's only if they are followed. And techniques that, might work for LeBron James in basketball, they won't work for most of us, right? He just says, just dunk. It's easy, just dunk, just throw a three-pointer. Like, okay, fine, well, I'm not that tall, I can't dunk, right? Instead of your vertical jump height, here it's emotional control. And even Nobel Prize winners are subject to these biases. These are behavioral biases. Look, you won't invest the same throughout your life because your priorities and your risks will change. So your investment strategy will also change. The trick is that time is your greatest asset when you are young. When you're older, you're just not trying to grow money as much necessarily. You're trying to protect it. You're about to retire. It's not about age so much. It's about what the wealth stage in life is that you're at. So you're either in growth accumulation or you're in preservation mode. Right? So at some point, you will mature into wealth preservation being more important than wealth growth or accumulation. So how do you decide what percentage of your portfolio to put into wealth preservation and what percentage of your portfolio to allocate to wealth growth? Now, I personally love the 110 rule. It's great. Like this 110 rule. Now, different people teach it differently. Take the 110, subtract your age. So if you're looking at this and you're 30 years old, then 110 minus 30 is 80. If you're 40 years old, 110 minus 40 is 70, right? So that's how much that you put in percent to allocate to equities or stocks. Now, these are slices of ownership in publicly traded companies, so we can actually buy and sell them. And they typically have great long-run growth performance. That's in the long run. But they can be subject to wild swings up and down. Now, the other 20%, typically that's for bonds or fixed income securities or other things as well. Like these usually have lower risk, and so they can smooth the ride. Now, if you have more of an appetite for risk, you can increase the percent that you are in stocks. That's what I personally do. If you're more averse to risk, so you dislike risk, then you can reduce your exposure to stocks. There's nothing hard and fast here. Some people allocate to other types of assets like real estate. I do. Commodities like precious metals, gold and silver, I've played with those. Or other things like oil, soybeans, you name it. Even cryptocurrencies, which I do too, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, or pure cash. I've got some of that too. Some go international also. Portfolio Visualizer is one great tool for playing around with this, right? First of all, you're going to have to create an account. Once you create an account, you can do back testing and all of this stuff here. You can plug in different portfolios. I love the 100% portfolio, but I'm extremely risk tolerant, and I find myself that I'm very, very safe in terms of other areas of my life. So I need to increase the risk in my portfolio because I have very low risk in my job. I'm a tenured university professor, so that means it's like a job for life, right? So because of that, and because of my asset base I'm coming in at this point with, I'm willing to basically put 100% in. Now, this is not for the faint of heart. This is not a recommendation, but I know, okay, I feel confident in the long run I'll probably do better over a very long period, but in the short run there'll be huge, massive drawdowns. So the actual amount, the biggest amount I'll come down with, a lot of risk. But you can play with things in different percentages like bonds, real estate, you can knock yourself out. But let's keep it simple, right? For those that don't want to play with portfolio visualizers, let's keep it simple. There's only so much you could invest. But for most people, right, there's honestly so many things. Like there's a big table and you've got everything. There's like, you've got your silver, you have like, let's say if you're eating at a dining table, right, like your starters. Imagine a big smorgasbord of like all kinds of food, right, like a king's medieval court, right, and we're seeing all these food. You could choose this, and there's wines, and there's desserts, and there's every type there. That's like the financial markets. There's everything you can invest in, but you probably only need one. Right? You heard that right. Maybe two, one or two, right? I think that most people would probably be best off just investing in a target date retirement account that does all the work for you. So you'd specify the year that you may think, like, this is the year I'd like to retire. Maybe it's like, I don't know, 2050, let's say. And you say, okay, that's fine. I'm going to invest in a 2050 retirement account. You're going to buy that fund automatically. Now, what do I actually do? So I was interested in equities and bond, the actual split of Jack Bogle, who invented the index fund, right? So I tell my senior undergraduate students, by the way, guys, he invented this when he was in college in your year, so no pressure, right? So he invented this, right, when he was in college, but now it's the biggest in the world. So like, what I look at his split. He's got two things. He's got VTSAX for the broad market index, and he's got VBTLX for bonds. You can get equivalents in BlackRock and iShares, Fidelity. There's all kinds of equivalents. You don't have to do this. This is just what I do. So most large US companies are in the VTSAX. They're exposed internationally. So you might be asking, well, Michael, you don't have any international exposure. Okay, fine, you want to do that, that's okay. But you already have that diversification. Coca-Cola, like Tesla, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, they all have international exposure. What happens in other countries will affect them. But because I'm extremely risk tolerant, and because of my active purchases of real estate rental properties, businesses I founded and run, other interests like stable job, lots of savings at this point. When it comes to asset allocation, I have been more or less 100%. I do own, I do own some of Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway shares, but that's just so I can attend his annual meetings. But I am pretty much 100%. Like, it's negligible, the amount that I hold in everything. It's 99 point something percent, right? It's 100% in equities for the best part of a decade now. I've taken the ups and the downs, and it has roared, right? It has roared. Yes, there were massive downs, but as long as you don't jump off the roller coaster, right? Sell when it's low. That's the worst thing. You're getting a terrible price. Then it goes straight back up. So you need to go further. How comfortable with risk are you? I'm extremely comfortable, but I'm not the average person. How comfortable are you with risk sleeping at night, especially when the market is volatile? It could be flat like 2022, right? It was very, very boring and annoying and frustrating. This matters just as much as allocation. It's whatever you're happy with, choose it and stick with it. Yes, there's concentration risk, and your portfolio could get heavy in one thing, like me with equities, but without even realizing it and reallocating it. But I don't want to have to spend time. I don't want to face costs of selling, including taxes, if it's outside it's not in a tax advantaged account. I don't have to worry about it. I don't I just don't jump off the roller coaster. I don't care what's happening to the market. If it's down, I say, great. It's good to buy. It's cheap. If you heard it in any other thing, if you were hearing about clothes and the price of clothes went down, you'd be like, this is great. I get a sale. It's like going to the outlets, right? When the market is down, I buy. And if it's up, I'm happy because my wealth is up. I just don't manually invest for the most part. I turn on autopilot and I tune out. I stick wax in my ear. This is actually what Odysseus is for those that are classics, right? In the Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey. I stick wax in my ear. I put blinds over my eyes. I don't know what's happening. But this took me education and time to understand and to avoid the idea called time inconsistency or the smoker's problem, right? Like, I'm going to give up smoking tomorrow. These are behavioral biases. Tomorrow comes, you still smoke. It's you are your own worst enemy. Also, instant gratification. I have to have it right now. I have delayed gratification, right? I'm okay waiting for the future. Now, Morningstar's Mind the Gap annually updates a study that shows how people, you and I, underperform the funds they invest in. Sounds strange. How could you underperform the fund that you invest in? Because they sell when the fund is low and they buy when it goes up. So you're buying at a higher price and you're selling at a lower price. You're going to lose money. And we are our own worst enemy, as I said. So risk tolerance matters. It's the biggest thing. Like, build a strategy you'll stick with and not sell when it gets bumpy. Do something you're comfortable with, whatever that is. It's better than doing nothing, but stick with it. If you start switching strategies, that's how you lose money. If you took nothing away from this, just don't switch. Stick with something, stay with it. Don't change it. If you change it, it's almost guaranteed to lose money, or to lose money relative to what you could have done. There are flukes, but it's better sticking with it. Speaking more on concentration risk, I should say that it's important to get some independence and not to be too high in any one area. Now, this could be like a single investment, like if you've got everything in one stock, like you hold just Tesla, for instance, or you hold just Coca-Cola, or you hold just Amazon, or you hold just whatever, IBM. Like, that's great, but you're basically there. You're if there's Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, like if he leaves the company, what happens, right? You've only got one stock. It's important, right, to go beyond that. Like, maybe you only have tech stocks. That's all you know, like one sector. Well, maybe there's other sectors that actually provide more stability. Like, it could be in the utilities sector, or it could be in other areas as well. In retail, communications, etc. So there's plenty of other sectors. Maybe you have energy, like oil and gas, things like that are going up when tech is going down, and vice versa. Maybe it's that you have all your risk in one country, all your risk in one asset. I mean, it's just stocks. You've got no real estate, no cash, nothing else. Or more. There's plenty of it. Now, suppose that you are working for a company and your company has given you a thing called company stock options. This is another thing of concentration risk. Ask, is this becoming too large a percentage of your overall portfolio? Like, do you truly believe in your company's long-term prospects? Now, you may want to de-risk by selling a bit and transferring into other investments that make more sense for you. Understand your own risk and how close to retirement you are and your risk appetite. This will determine how your portfolio looks and what percentages you choose. This helps you build a sustainable portfolio and ensures that you're fine no matter what happens. All right, section 7. This is the final section, but it's a big section, a lot of extra nuggets here. It's called Accelerators and Pitfalls. Before we talk about houses and cars, the fun stuff, let's plug the number one leak, taxes. All in, taxes are about 1/4 to 1/3 of income on average, often bigger than any single spending category. You pay taxes on income on what you earn, on sales on what you buy, you got property taxes on what you own, and other taxes on gains on investments. And look, taxes are my single biggest line item. Probably they are yours too. So here are simple legal moves that most people miss that put money back into your pocket, and you can plan this year. So you want to shield your income first. Let's say you grab your employer match, then you contribute to your pre-tax, before you pay tax, or post-tax, that's like a Roth version, your workplace plan essentially. For a lot of us, it's something what's known as a 401k. If you're in university or a non-profit, it's called like a 403b. So contribute at least enough to get the full match. That's an instant 100% returns on those dollars. And if cash allows, keep contributing to your 401k or 403b up to the limits. Now, there are catch-up rules that do apply for those that are a little bit older. This lowers your taxable income now. Or if you're doing the Roth versions, and you can ask to switch in some cases to Roth 401k, Roth 403b, this would be tax-free later. It grows tax. You pay tax now, but it grows tax-free. Everything there that grows tax-free. Now, there's also Roth as well. We'll talk about that shortly. But employer contribution limits, just a little tip. Employer contribution limits are much higher than employee ones. So if there's something in the 20s, that's here right now for the employee, it's actually higher for the employer. Now, a health savings account, the HSA, that's next. If you have a high deductible healthcare plan, so you pay a lot before the insurance kicks in, this gives you like a triple tax advantage. This is like the Marvel superhero right now. You want to treat this like a stealth retirement account. There's pretty decent limits, especially even more so if you've got a family. And there's catch-up for those that are 55 and older. Again, this is not the video to go into too much detail for it, but this is like you pay no tax in, you pay no tax out, provided you use it on the health spending. Or you pay it later on in life, you use it later on in life. Maybe you use your own money right now, but you keep the bills, the receipts, and later on when you take the money out, you can just use those receipts to claim it. IRAs, or individual retirement accounts, they still matter. Try to next fund your Roth IRA. Now, if you're over 50, there's a great catch-up program. As long as you fund it, do your best to basically bring it up to the limit if you can. Even if you cross the income threshold, beyond which it's not allowed, there is a mega backdoor Roth that I go into in another video. Why the Roth IRA is underused. Tax-free growth, tax-free qualified withdrawals, great for young or high growth years. Also, there's a retirement tax diversifier later because you have maybe partly a regular 401k, partly a Roth. So that's good just in case you're not sure which ways taxes are going to go. If taxes go up, Roth is great. If they go down, well, the 401k would have been better. But if you have both, it's great to have that for diversification. So you just don't know which way the taxes are going. You're basically hedging your bets. Now, another thing, I don't personally do it, but another thing a lot of people do is they open a 529 for their children. I don't have children yet. I also have a discount because I'm a university professor. But even yourself, you can do this for yourself, not just for your kids. If you want to get more education, at this point I have about 5 degrees. Most of them are postgraduate degrees. So I don't need more qualifications at this point. So I don't plan on going back to college anytime soon. I'm in college for the last 20 years. So tax-free growth, this is what's great on these 529s for qualified educational expenses. Now, many states give a state tax deduction or credit on contributions. There's a bonus also under Secure Section 2.0. So this is like unused 529 funds can roll to a Roth IRA for the same beneficiary. So if it's for your child, it's for your child. It's for you, it's for you. Or for somebody else you name. There's a lifetime cap on this of $35,000. And of course, the account, the 529, must be at least 15 years old. And it's also subject to annual IRA limits, right? Whatever the limit is for the Roth IRA, for instance. And also earned income rule. You have to be earning in those years you're contributing to. The state treatment does vary. This makes, though, the 529s much safer than before. Now, for those of you that are listening that are self-employed, you can be a plumber, dentist, whatever. If you're self-employed, use SEP IRAs or solo 401ks if you want Roth or loan options later. right? That's for the solo 401k, for instance. But you can use the SEP IRA, you can fund at tax time so that you don't have to choose growth versus cash today. Employer contribution limits are much higher than employee. So if you do have a side hustle and it's making you a lot of money, you can, depending on your money, your income, you can really jack it up here. Again, the aggregate will matter, but you can contribute a lot more here than if you were just a regular W-2 worker, typically, with mostly employee contributions. Because if you're a W-2 regular worker, it's employee contributions. You know, you're kind of lucky if the employer matches it. But here, as a self-employed individual, you're paying yourself. It is 100% employer. It's best for tax purposes, 100% employer contributions. And in this case, it's a much higher limit than what you have, right? So at one point it was like early 70,000s, late 60,000 versus around about 19, 20,000. It's a bit higher now for the employee. So it's way, way higher. You can put a lot more away here. Even if you're a W-2, there are some cases for W-2 workers where you can ask your employer about this. There are some switches where you own the plan itself, etc., and convert them to employer contributions. But I would speak to a licensed tax advisor for this. I am not currently a licensed tax advisor. This is not tax advice. If you need tax advice, I suggest you consult with a licensed tax advisor. But you might take some of these concepts to them and they can hash out the exact details, because the details change just like the wind. If you're both a W-2 from my university that I work at, as well as a self-employed person for the businesses that I run, that I own, because I'm part of both, and if you have both, if you're a W-2 as well as self-employed, then you'll have to use the aggregate. So yeah, you can't use employee plus employer. You can't basically use both from, even if you got multiple jobs, like you could do job stacking, etc. You're working from loads of jobs. Sorry, you are the individual, so it's all combined to you. And if you've got multiple businesses, the aggregate has to be the same, right? So it cannot be that, I've got 60,000 or 70,000 limit. I've got two jobs, that's 70 and 70 is 140. No, you can't do that. There's no loopholes here in that regard. But every dollar that you legally move, this is tax avoidance, legal moves, not evasion. That's illegal. We don't like that. We want tax avoidance. This, if you move it to pre-tax, this lowers the IRS slice and raises your savings rate. So your years to freedom shrink. Now, another thing you can do is spend your pre-tax where possible, pre-tax income. Now, I'm not a big fan of this, but you can do it. Something like the flexible savings account or the FSA or dependent care if it's offered. So this is a case of use it or lose it. That's why I don't like putting it in, because then I put it in. If I don't spend it, it's gone, right? And then it was gone. So you want to put it in if you're a big spender in this regard. You've got dependent care. If you're going to use it, then fine. Another thing you could think about is transit or parking benefits. These are things like you have in your work program. So all the perks that your job gives, use them. Use employer perks that you're already eligible for. It could be education, it could be wellness, right? Deeper dive in another video potentially than I'm going to go into here. Now, there are other credits that a lot of people miss. So check your eligibility for the Savers Credit. For low, moderate income savers, you guys can get federal credit for retirement contributions. Again, the limits update yearly, so you want to check the IRS tables. Check also the Earned Income Tax Credit, or EITC. You'll probably see this on your paychecks, your stubs. This is huge for eligible workers. Now, the amounts or limits vary by filing states as well as dependents. Above and beyond this, we can think about home and EV, or electrical vehicle, incentives. This is only if you're buying, so don't force yourself to buy something, right? Your home energy upgrades can get you credits. So energy efficient home improvement credits are great. They're generally about 20% of qualified costs with annual caps. So typically, let's say up to $1,200 total plus $2,000 for something like heat pumps, right? For water heaters, things like that. Residential clean energy credit as well as 30% usually for solar and certain systems. Don't overcomplicate this. Just check the IRS page before you sign a contract. Now, EVs or used EVs, they may qualify for point of sale credits. Now, since 2024, you can transfer the credit to the dealer to lower your price if the car and your income qualify. Now, the rules change, so verify the model and your eligibility. Right size withholding and estimate. So make sure that your withholding matches reality so that you're not giving the government too much, right? An interest-free loan essentially, or facing a surprise bill that it's like the other way around. So if you have a side income, set monthly auto transfers into a tax bucket so that quarterlies don't hurt. You're paying quarterly taxes on a lot of these businesses. So make sure that like you're ready when tax season comes or your quarterly taxes come. Self-employed basics actually matter. Things like separate your business account, like a separate business account and cards. Having an accountable plan to reimburse yourself for legitimate business expenses cleanly. Separate business and personal. If there's a meal expense and you're talking about how to boost revenue during the meal and you record that, or you're driving with the purpose of trying to increase revenue, you're going to get a smelt meat to make a sale, things like that. Mileage or depreciation, mileage or actual expense method. So just pick one, right? So it could be the actual expense, like the price of your vehicle if you're using it for your business, and that's depreciation, or the miles, something like the Everlance app. I use that, I love it. But keep simple logs. Again, the Everlance app is great. Keep receipts and invoices, right? A cheap app is totally fine. Now, these boring tax moves fund everything else. Now, let's stop the second biggest leak. In fact, some people's biggest, and that is accommodation. So in terms of housing, the question is, should you buy, should you rent, or should you hack? Now, some people don't even know that third option. So you got to choose what buys your freedom faster. That's what I would say anyway. Your home is your biggest lifestyle choice, and often your biggest money leak, especially after taxes. So let's stop thinking rent versus buy and start thinking cleverly. What is the total cost of shelter, TCOS for short, and what is the freedom per dollar? Then I'll show you the hacks that turn a home into a helper. So the big idea is, forget just asking, can I afford the mortgage? Use the total cost of shelter, TCOS. This covers your mortgage, which is like your principal that you're paying down to own the place, plus the interest the bank is charging you, or it could be the rent if you're renting. There's taxes if you own, there's insurance. You'll actually also pay insurance if you're a renter, usually renter's insurance. There's a HOA or Homeowners Association dues if you're living in a Homeowners Association. There's also maintenance if you're an owner, right? And maintenance, typically 1, sometimes 2% of the value of the home per year. Expect to pay about that. There's also the utilities. Now, utilities you'll pay either way. There's also closing or selling costs if you buy a home, and you can amortize or basically break that down over the life of your loan, let's say 30 years. But you also should subtract, and here's what's sometimes missing. If you are able to house hack or rent hack, you're able to subtract income. Maybe you've got extra people living with you, right? Maybe you're sharing part of the accommodation, right? And they're paying your rent, if you own a place in particular. So compare that all to the rent plus the renter's insurance if you're actually renting, and also expect you will pay rent increases. As you rent, it typically goes up over time, usually between 2 and 4%. And don't forget the opportunity cost of your down payment. So if you're plugging in a lot of money to buy that house first, you could have put that somewhere else and earned it elsewhere, right? That cash could have earned it elsewhere. So let's look at this thing. I like to call it the 4+1 test. This is your fast decision filter. Number 1, the time test. Will you stay at least 7 years? Now, round trip costs are real, like buying and selling, the fees, like for buying and selling properties, but also moving either way and making a place ready. If you're not likely to stay for 7 years, renting usually wins unless you can house hack, which we'll discuss soon. So that's the time test, 7 years. 2, price to rent test. So here we're going to take the home price and divide by the annual rent for a comparable place. If that ratio is under 18 to 20, so the price is pretty cheap relative to the rent, then buying is usually what's going to work, at least in dollar terms. Whereas if the ratio is higher than 22 or 25, that means the price is probably pretty expensive or the rent is pretty cheap. So the renting usually wins on a dollar term. Now, again, this is a screen. It's not a verdict. You want to layer it with the other tests. The third test is a liquidity test. So after your down payment, your closing costs, do you still have maybe 6 months of personal runway, not counting retirement accounts? If not, you may need to rent or buy something smaller. A house without a cash cushion becomes a stress machine. Fourth, you want to look at something called the stability or optionality test. So here we're thinking about jobs, relationships, your location. Like, are these stable? How stable are they? If they're very stable, buying gets easier. If they're not that stable, then it's difficult, right? Because you might expect career jumps, relocation, or you might just love flexibility. If that's the case, then you might want to rent. Only buy if you can get your house to cash flow via a hack, which we'll talk about very, very soon. Now, here's something that very few people consider, and I want to give this as a big value added in this video. This is what I'm going to call the +1, the 4.5, step 4.5. This is called the rental backstop test. You want to buy early like an investor. So if I had to move in 12 to 24 months, 1 to 2 years, could this place work as a rental if I use conservative numbers? So simply how to run it. First, we're going to look at finding the realistic market rate from comparables. Look at other properties, see what the rents are on those properties, if they're similar bed count, bath count, space, etc., square footage, etc., in the local market. Second is we're going to compute what is known as your net operating income. It's just the difference between your rent and then all the costs. So you want to look at vacancy. So when you're not renting it, usually 5 to 8%. Maintenance costs or capital expenditures, roof, etc., usually 8 to 10% of the rent. Management fees, I'm getting 5%, but I'm lucky in one regards. 8 to 10% even if you self-manage. You want to price in your time. You don't want to work for free. Also add up your principal, interest, tax and insurance, and your homeowners association. So use your actual owner-occupier stuff here. So, think about the payment and also sanity check everything. So add a 1% interest just as an investor-related stress, because usually it's like 1%, can typically be 1% higher if you're taking out investor loans. Now, your debt service coverage ratio, you want to make sure that you're covering the net operating income, but make sure that you adjust this for your PITI, your principal, interest, tax, insurance, usually your mortgage. That's your mortgage. The PITI is typically your mortgage, and that is the cost of your mortgage. That's usually what you're paying every month. And your home or association, homeowner association, if you are in a homeowner association, usually condos, stuff like that, townhomes, things like that. Sometimes they have HOAs. If this service ratio is bigger than 1.1, pass. This is safe to buy to rent as a fallback. If it's less than 1, I think you'd probably fail. You'd be subsidizing it. So it's probably better to rent or maybe buy a smaller property or consider house hacking to jack those numbers up in your favor of buying. And if it passes the rental backstop, you don't need 7 years to win. This is what I do. I typically move into a place, I move out of it after a year or 2 years. You can buy now, live in it, convert it later without bleeding cash. If the test fails, then just consider renting right now or hacking a cheaper buy until the maths works. Now, just a little compliance nudge here. Make sure if you're buying it as an owner-occupier that you do indeed intend to occupy as the loan requirements requires. So that's usually 12 months. At least you must live there for at least 12 months. If you do convert it from an owner-occupier to a rental, then you're going to have to switch to landlord insurance, right? And you also want to check your homeowners association, HOA, as well as any rental caps. There could be some restrictions. And just keep a good capital exchange reserve. So if it passes at least 3 of the first 4 tests and it passes the 4.5, the backstop test, then you might want to consider buying or home or house hacking. If it fails 2 or more, or the backstop fails, then you may want to rent smartly, or you may want to buy something much smaller and hack. Now, there's two winning paths, just so that, you cannot choose the wrong path. The first would be rent smart. When tests are saying, not yet, don't buy just yet. One thing you can do is negotiate a renewal before the peak season. Usually, again, depends on the area. In some places, the peak season, if it's college area, maybe it's around about like August, September. So, you're not going to, good luck trying to get a good deal around that time of the year. In some places, it's usually around about, March, that kind of time, March, April. Usually December for most places, January for most places. Usually that's a really cold time. So if you can renew around then, you'll probably get a good deal if you're allowed to. So another thing to do to get a good deal is offer a longer term for a lower rate. Look, I'll stay with you for 2 years, let's say, something like that. You could usually get, I have done that before. Again, I'm talking from experience here, and I was able to save. It was going to go up by $100, but I negotiated it to go up by $50 the first year and the $50 the second year. You can rent hack. This is where, again, you need to check the local rules, but you might get a roommate. You might have an in-law suite, something like that. You might furnish a room, and you might get, because you found a place, you might get your roommate to pay you, and then basically you're renting from a landlord, so you might split the cost, and that way you've actually lowered the overall cost completely, right? So you're no longer, if you're renting a place, you're renting the whole place out for yourself, like renting a slightly bigger place that has 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms. Now you've put someone else in the other bedroom. Again, you must check your local rules, must get permission, must ask your landlord, make sure, like, I'm not saying do things that are dodgy, do this the legit way, but rent hacking is a legit way as long as you have permission. If they don't allow you, move on, find another place. Another thing you can do is banking the difference, right, between owning and renting. Invest it. If you are renting and it would cost you more to own, look at the difference and see if you can put that difference into a bank and invest it. The optionality that you can do that and that you've got flexibility, that is a real asset. Now, another thing to do is to buy smart. If the tests are saying go, like buy, then remember just to keep your total cost of shelter no more than about 30% or a third of your after-tax income. Again, this might be more doable if you can hack the income and you can actually increase that, because it would lower your total cost of shelter, or you could look at it also as increasing your take-home income if you can hack them, if it's applicable. Budget 1 to 2% a year of the value of the property. If it's $500,000, budget $5,000 in terms of maintenance or capital expenditures. So maybe repairing roof eventually at some point, systems like even things like your water heater, things like that. Prefer a fixed rate, something like a 30-year fixed rate. It's boringly great for location. You want something really boring, but it's a great location. And something that's easy to resell. Great locations have easier. There's a reason they say location, location, location. It's easy to resell. You usually get good clients or tenants eventually if you do renting or rental. It's usually got solid appreciation. You're not going to necessarily get massive cap rates or cash on cash or great rental returns, but you'll have something solid. And that solidity builds your wealth, and you don't pay tax while you own the property. Before you sell it, you're able to basically enjoy the value of your home going up without paying tax. Bad neighborhoods, bad locations, your house won't go up nearly as much, typically speaking, as a good location. Now, there are exceptions, but that's usually when a bad location becomes a good location. Let's say gentrification, things like that, right, that weren't planned beforehand, or that you would have known about, or maybe you got lucky. Another thing to do if you own is house hack. If you've got a duplex, that's a 2-unit building or above, a triplex, that's 3 units, or a quadplex, 4 units, etc. Or you have an ADU, an additional dwelling unit. Maybe you have a converted garage, right? Maybe you have a room rental. If there's any space that you can rent, even seasonally, as long as you make sure you're doing this all with local compliance, right, legal, but a small hack can swing the math massively. It could be you've got a bit of a commercial place below the building and you've bought the place and you can rent it out, etc. Whatever you can do. You've got a garage, you rent the garage out, so the garage, you rent the garage out and the garage, someone can use the garage, things like that. But a small hack can swing the maths massively. So the smart compare, just a quick example again, we're looking at same neighborhood, we're going to look at buying versus renting. Suppose you could buy a $500,000 home, put 20% down, it's 100 grand. That's a 30-year fixed mortgage. Now, the payment, that's the principal plus the interest, let's say it's X dollars. The tax, the insurance, the homeowners association, let's say it's Y dollars. The maintenance, usually 1 to 2%, I think 1.5% average of your price per year. That's the property price. So 1% of that, 1.5% of that, that's about 7.5 grand. If 5,000 is 1%, 7,500 is 1.5% per year. That works out to be about $625 a month. So your total cost of shelter before hacking it is all these ones added up. X, which is your payment, Y, which is again your tax, insurance, home and association, maintenance as well. Make sure that you include that. That's your 625. That's your total cost of shelter per month. Now the opportunity cost to go further is, well, you put 100,000 down and you could have been putting that in the stock market or somewhere else, right? You could have earned 5%, 6%, 7%, you name it, elsewhere. So we'll call that about $400 to $600 a month of foregone return if you had taken that 100 grand and put it somewhere else to make that. Now, when you're looking at rent, you want to, compare this at, let's say, $3,000 a month. That's a comparable one, let's say. And with renter's insurance, if you were renting, you'd be paying, let's say, $15 a month. That's just an example. Expect about a 3% a year rise. So next year it might go up to $3,090, for instance. Now, there's a house hack twist here. This is what I love. You convert, let's say you've got a garage or an additional dwelling unit or ADU, or you get an extra room that you're not using to bring a little bit better, right? To make maybe an extra $900 a month. And this could be like, as long as it's compliant, right? We're going to call this compliant income, right? So that you're not doing it illegally. Well, now your total cost of shelter has dropped by $900. I love this. This is what I try to do. Suddenly, buying might beat renting, even after counting maintenance and opportunity costs. Run the full monthly, including maintenance and the foregone return on your down payment. Then subtract hack income. If the buy is cheaper and you pass the tests, then buy. If not, then rent and keep the option to move fast when life changes. I go in and out of these situations like that all the time. Right now, when I'm recording this video, I'm currently renting, but I'm about to buy and house hack and even go all the way down to even hacking some of the rooms and having short-term in one of the two of the rooms like that while I live in the same place. So, I adopt all these strategies depending on my time. Right now I'm renting, and that was for personal reasons, flexibility in between. So let's do a smart comparison with some pro moves. I want to show you guys why investor maths often favors buying. Okay, now this is if you really want to crank up, and this is what I'm all about, right? Is like building your path to wealth. It's actually better. Real estate is actually better, almost to an extent, the poorer you are, right? This is how to get wealthy quicker, not fast, not get rich quick. But this is a really, if you understand it, it does take more work. It's not for everybody, right? But if you were willing to tap into it, this is why it works. If you're not, stock market's going to put you ahead of everyone. Easy, stress-free life. You're doing amazing. You're ahead of most people by just doing that. But the real estate, for those that are trying to climb even faster. So let's look at some investor maths here to show why buying usually dominates. 30-year versus 15-year mortgage. Time value and optionality. A 30-year fixed is a permission slip to keep payments low. The hurdle is lower at the 30 per month because it's split out over a longer period. Yeah, you're paying more interest. Yeah, the cost goes up, but look at it the monthly for a second. You can always pay it off quickly. You can always prepay it fast. There's usually no prepayment penalty. You can check with the lender. So you can simulate a 15-year thing by paying extra, but you're never obligated to. So if you lose your job and you can't make up the higher monthly, you're not out of luck. If your realistic after-tax return on investment, let's say your business or index funds, whatever you're investing in, if that exceeds your after-tax mortgage rate, because again, you might be paying 7%, but maybe you're getting deductions and write-offs, and so it's really just 6%. So look at the after-tax, 6%. Well, if your return is 8% in the stocks versus 6% here, you might as well just not worry about it too much. The 30-year plus invest the spread, that's the extra 2%, that usually beats a forced 15-year rate. Now, discipline check, set up auto invest for the difference. Now, why is it that I've only put 5% down and 10% down. I've never put 20% down on properties. Why is it that some people put less down? Why is it smarter? And PMI can be too. So less down means lower opportunity cost and more liquidity. I can keep the other cash, grow it in the stock market, get my returns. Yes, you'll pay the private mortgage insurance, PMI. If you're on an FHA, it's called MIP. But it's cancelable on a conventional mortgage, right? It's often, and by the way, it's tiny. It's like usually, again, it varies. Usually 0.3 to 1%, can be a little higher, can be a bit lower, but 0.3 to 1% of the loan. So if you were paying, let's say it was 0.5. So if you're paying 6.25, now it's gone up to 6.75. That's it. And it can fall off, usually around 80%. So if you put in, let's say, a 5% down, once you own 20%, either the market has gone up or you've basically paid that much off. Well, in that case, by scheduling or getting a new appraisal after the value has been added, so you could even force, in my case, I took fixer-upper properties, I did them up, almost like flipping them straight away. I went back to the mortgage companies and I got them to reappraise. And they said, oh, your house is worth almost twice, or your house has gone up by 100,000. Oh, you now own a greater percentage of the house because the house is worth so much more. The loan represents such a small, now we'll wipe off that extra PMI payment. So I got in for very little dollars, did a bit of work on it, and then all of a sudden I wiped off the PMI, got the same rate as if I had put down tens of thousands of dollars more. And it takes a long time for a lot of people to save up tens of thousands. You don't need to do that. The ongoing PMI, again, that ongoing PMI cost, it's frequently smaller than the return that you give up by parking an extra 50 or 100,000 into a down payment. And by the way, if you are getting an FHA loan, the MIP will stick for the life of that loan unless you refi out. You get another loan to replace it. So you basically use another loan to pay off that loan, and that way you snip it in the bud, you get rid of the MIP. Now, principal, the actual principal, is not a cost. A lot of people think, oh, I'm paying a mortgage and I'm paying the two numbers, rent versus mortgage. Part of that mortgage is literally you saving. It's going into your principal. So your P&I, or principal interest payment, has interest. That is a cost. And principal, but that's the equity that you keep. So in the terms of the total cost of shelter, focus on the interest and the taxes and the insurance, not on the principal. Also, of course, you want to focus on the Homeowners Association fees, if you have any of that, maintenance, and the opportunity cost, of course, of the trapped equity when you plug that money into the house, the down payment. But the principal that you're paying down, that's a transfer to you. Like you're owning more and more of that property over time, as well as any benefits from any appreciation, either the market or that you've forced it because you've done it up and now it's worth more because it's much nicer than it was when you came in first. Forced appreciation, I mentioned this a few times, so this is what I love. You control the difference or the change, or in finance, the delta. You cannot force a landlord to renovate, but you can improve your own place. So smart budgeted upgrades like the kitchens, baths, systems, the curb appeal, things like this, a little bit of paint job, floors, kitchen, things like the countertops, some of the appliances like the lighting, the doorknobs, the hardware. These can raise the value and or the rental potential. Just make sure to keep the permits and receipts, because any capital improvements that you make, they add to the basis, right? And that reduce taxable gains later. Now, hack the taxes when you rent part or you later convert. So you might be renting a room or an additional dwelling unit, or even more, you might be looking at one unit of a 2 to 4. So I have a duplex, I'm also getting into a quadplex right now, like a 4-unit building. You might be renting out those other units while you live in one. So you can typically deduct the pro rata, so that percentage of the property, the share of the interest. If you're living in a 4-unit property, you live in one, you rent the other 3, that means 3/4. You can be deducting the interest, the taxes, 3/4 of that, the insurance, the repairs, etc. And as well as that, you can depreciate the rented portion. So huge amount, it's fantastic. Real estate, so many things under the water level, right? The iceberg, there's so much more below the water that we don't see up front. So short-term rentals, by the way, they do have special rules, so make sure you follow the local law and keep very clean records. A modest, compliant hack can flip the buy versus rent decision decisively. Renting is a lifestyle win sometimes, but buying with skill, here we have a 30-year optionality. Because you can always go from 30 to 15. You've got smart down payment. You've, putting in less. You've value add options. You can force appreciation. Even like a light cosmetic renovation, or even a light house hack where you're renting one of the bedrooms even, that usually dominates financially. If you won't use these levers, or they fail the rental backstop, just not a good area for rental, then consider renting for now and keep your capital working elsewhere. Maybe it's in the stock market or somewhere else. But there's numbers and there's also psychology. Buying can feel like I made it. Renting can feel temporary. So you may want to flip that script. Stability comes from a strong balance sheet and low stress, not just a deed. If buying raises your total cost of ownership so much that you lose flexibility or sleep, it slows your freedom. Now, just remember those pro moves, like making sure you have that interest rate reality, like don't buy a payment hoping to refinance. Buy a house you can afford today. Treat any future refinance at a different interest rate as an upside, not a plan. Interest rates may come down, but don't plan for that. In terms of your down payment strategy, look, a bigger down lowers the payment, but it does raise the opportunity cost, because you could be taking some of that money and growing it. If your investments or your business reliably beat your mortgage rate, consider not over down payment. If you still pass the liquidity test, make sure you do. Now, in terms of closing and selling friction, because you do have a lot of closing costs, the buying costs, the title, transfer, points, selling costs, usually 5 to 8% in terms of agents and other fees. This is why the time test typically matters. That's why I said around 7 years. Taxes, you want to keep it practical. Don't overestimate the mortgage interest deduction. You might actually think you're getting a bigger deduction than you are. Many households don't itemize, or they're limited by SALT, the state and local taxes caps. As an owner-occupier, you live in the building, capital gains exclusions can be powerful later. If you live there 2 of the last 5 years, then you get that. There are some rules that apply, but the Section 121 exclusion can shield up to $250,000 or even $500,000 of gains. Now, for investment properties, if you've got a rental property, consider a 1031 exchange. That can defer capital gains when you sell and buy something that's similar. Not for a primary residence, but it is relevant if you can convert a rental first. This is quite advanced in terms of timing. There's mixed-use combinations that exist, but we're going to save that for a deeper dive. Keep it high integrity, though. Make sure that you know your local landlord, your short-term, and your tax rules. In terms of risk management, remember an emergency fund should be separate from your closing cash. Okay, it's not for your closing cash. Don't count on appreciation to bail you out of too tight a buy. An insurance rise, right? If you're thinking about it, make sure that you know your flood and your wind risk. The hacks ladder, let's have a look at that. So the rent hacking, again, you could have a roommate, maybe an in-law, or any kind of person you want, friend, etc., they're staying there. Make sure that it's compliant as a room rental. So on the lighter side of this, house hack light, let's call it, we're going to own a single family home. And this could be an apartment, this could be a townhouse, this could be an actual single family detached home, whatever. But you're going to legally rent out some of the bedrooms, as long as it's more than one bedroom, right? It's going to be a little sticky if it's not one bedroom, right? Unless you're having a bunk bed or something like you're in college, like that kind of thing. But legally, you're going to rent out the bedrooms. Or maybe you have an ADU. It could be like you have a garage, and that garage, you can rent out the garage for storage space in the neighborhood, etc. So people can use it for storage space, things like that. Now, you can do that, or occasionally, maybe having a compliant, like a short-term rental, right? Instead of long-term, maybe do like Airbnb one of the bedrooms in your property. So, you're living in a 2-bed, you bought a 2-bed home, Airbnb one of the 2 bedrooms. As long as it's legal, you hopefully should be able to really reduce the cost, even make it cash flow positive. You may be even actually getting paid to live. Now, the next level up, so I've done the House Hack Lite, but the next level up, House Hack Pro, I've done this too. This is a 2 to 4 unit building where you got owner-occupant financing. This is the best leverage. You get lower interest rates, longer terms, better credit situations whatsoever. It's much better. You qualify for more. You can put down more as well, so you can buy more. You live in one unit, you rent the other units. Duplex, I rented the other unit, lived in one. Quadplex, I'm moving into right now. Fourplex, I'm going to live in one, rent the other 3 out. So you rent the others out to your neighbors or your tenants, and their tenants help you pay the mortgage. So you live for free. Now, there is another one. This is a live-in, then rent conversion. So you might buy as an owner-occupier. I've done this too. And then you move later. So I bought a single family. I moved a year later, and I kept that single family as a rental. Now, you want to mind your loan occupancy rules. So you must live there typically at least a year. Also make sure the insurance does change. No longer a regular, now it becomes an actual, like a landlord, like a proper policy. And also your local regulation in terms of if they have any limits to the rent that you can charge, if they don't allow short-term rentals, etc. So check in with all of this. There's finally a geo hack. So this is what's called rent where you work, and then buy a rental where numbers make sense. In fact, to think about it, I do. Currently, when I'm recording this video, I actually am. I'm renting right now at the time of recording, but I also have bought and own right now rentals, right? It just makes sense for me temporarily to do this. Now, your glide path is what it's called. It's how fast, right? That's like the aircraft analogy earlier on. Remember, we're clearing the runway, right? Clear the runway. That's like getting rid of the debt, getting into an airplane. The glide path, how fast your net worth climbs towards freedom. The sky is the limit. But if you lower your total cost of shelter, you increase your savings rate, and you reduce the number of years you have until financial independence. So if you do buy a place that can help pay you. If you do rent in a way that helps you, your glide path, like really structure it so that you can save and invest more each month. Just keep an eye on the prize. The net worth, is it adding to it or is it taking from it? So, quick decision grid. Are we staying at least 7 years? Is the price to rent under 20? Do you have at least 6 months more in cash left after closing? Is your career location stable, or will you be house hacking or hacking income somehow? If there's 3 or 4 yeses, then buy it. By all means, buy it or house hack. If there's less than 2 yeses, probably, or only 2 yeses, you may want to rent smart and stack cash in the meantime. So don't ask just rent or buy. Ask which option gives me the lower total cost of shelter and the most freedom. If it passes the 4 tests, use the hacks and make your home, whether it's owned or rented, accelerate your timeline, not slow it. I want to just add this little thing, a bit like a Marvel movie that has a little ending at the end, like a 1-minute clip. Real estate can outrun stocks. You heard that right. Why can real estate build faster early on, in particular, when you're first starting out? 4 engines: leverage, cash flow, amortization, and tax. So leverage with 20% down in a $400,000 property, a 5% rise is $20K. You put down $80K, so you got $20K back. That 5% was really 25%, huge before cost, of course. Cash flow, if you've bought well-bought unit, they're going to basically produce a monthly surplus if you've bought right. And that monthly surplus allows you extra income that you can channel to buy into more and more assets. Amortization, so your loan over time, the tenants are going to pay down your principal, right? So the amortization, every month you're paying more towards your principal, what you've borrowed, and less towards interest. So your tenants are paying this down if you rent it out. So your equity is going to rise more and faster and faster and faster, even if the price is flat, even if the house price doesn't increase. Every month, you're owning more and more of the house. So your equity, your assets go up, your net wealth, which is what we're aiming for, right? That goes up. And finally, tax. Depreciation can shelter some of your cash flow, even from other income. Interest or other expenses, they can be deductible, for the rented portion if you're renting part or all of your house. Okay, in guardrails, only count on this if the purchase passes a rental backstop. Conservative debt service coverage ratio at least 1.1, and you keep at least 6 months in reserves. Otherwise, stocks may be safer and simpler. Cars. Cars are the second biggest money drain after housing, so our goal is simple. Drive something you like without setting your wealth on fire. The trick is to stop thinking in terms of monthly payment and start thinking in terms of total cost to own, much like the housing, right? So the total cost to own means everything, not just the loan, the price after rebates and the fees, but the interest you pay, the insurance, the fuel, the routine maintenance and repairs, and what you're going to sell it for later. When you look at the whole cost, better choices become obvious. So step 1, set a simple speed limit for spending. Use your take-home pay after you pay taxes, money that actually hits your bank, and cap your car's all-in monthly cost inside one of these 3 lanes. Again, not a hard and fast rule, but here are the ones. Number 1, lean, up to about 8% of your take-home pay. 2, balanced, around about 12% of your take-home pay. Enthusiast, about 15% of your take-home pay. Only if you cut elsewhere would I consider the enthusiast. Now, if you take home, let's say $6,000 a month, this would mean that for a lean, you're looking at about 480. Balanced, 720. Enthusiast, about 900. Now, this beats the broad, spend 25 to 35% on transport rules, because it forces you to count insurance, fuel, and upkeep, real costs that vary a lot by car and driver. And in terms of step 2, we're going to pick the car type that fits the lane. Best value for most people is probably a 3 to 6 year old one-owner car with clean history, scheduled maintenance. The first owner eats the heavy depreciation. You still get years of life. Look, it's only 3 to 6 years old. If you buy new, do it when there are real incentives, like there's a model year changeover or there's a slow moving trim, and it still must fit your lane. Now, step 3, cash or finance. Use opportunity cost, not slogans. So paying for cash feels great, but it isn't automatically best. Ask one question. Is the loan rate higher or lower than what my cash can realistically earn elsewhere with low risk or in my business? So if the loan is expensive, say 8%, and you don't have a better use for the cash, then pay more down or pick a cheaper car. So if the loan is cheap, let's say it's under 5% or no more than 5%, keeping more cash for investing can be smarter, as long as your total cost still fits your lane. So that's the time value in plain English. So cheap loan, cash keeps working. Expensive loan, your cash gets dragged down. So a quick verdict on lease versus buy. If you keep cars 5 to 10 years, like I mostly do, then buying or financing to own, it's usually the lowest total cost to own. Leasing usually bundles depreciation, finance charges, fees, so they're often costing more unless the deal is heavily subsidized or you truly need a short, predictable term. Yeah, you get your tax write-offs at your business. Yeah, sometimes they cover the maintenance, but you got to look at everything. If you like to swap cars, by the way, especially like luxury or exotics, I have, ask for a dealer-assisted courtesy trade. Now, you're going to find the buyer. The dealer processes the sale as a trade on your behalf, right, on your next purchase for a flat fee. So in most states, you're taxed on the difference instead of the full price again. That trick alone can save thousands of dollars and more every single time you do it. Now, for exotics or luxury cars, my default is to finance to own and control the exit, Leases usually lose on total cost. The exception might be a heavily subsidized lease. And when flipping, use a dealer courtesy trade to capture the trade and tax credit, as I just mentioned. It's often worth more than any fee. Now, I'm going to walk through the full math, lease versus buy versus finance, invest the difference, and the courtesy trade playbook in separate videos. Step 4, 0% versus rebate. Take the cheaper money, not the prettier headline. Dealers often offer 0% financing or a cash rebate. Decide with a simple smart compare that includes totals and what you can do with any freed cash. For example, suppose you're looking at that same $25,000 car over a 48 months or 4-year loan term. Option A might be a 0% rate, sounds great. The payment is about $521 a month. That total cost then is $25,000. Option B, you get a $3,000 rebate up front, financing essentially $22,000, but it's at an outside, something like a 5% rate at an outside credit union. Now the payment is a bit lower. It's $507 a month, but when we look at the total, it's also lower. It's $24,300. So you want to base your winner on the total paid. In this case, it's option B by $700, even though A said 0%. So don't get swept away when they say 0%. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to add monthly cash that you free up, and we're going to invest it. So the payment gap difference, or delta, as we say in finance, is $14. If you also invested $14 a month, and you can, at 4% in something like a high yield savings account for 48 months, right, 4 years, that will grow to $727. Now, if you put it into an index fund, something like the mutual fund, at 7%, you turn on your reoccurring contributions. At 7% over 4 years, right, if you were getting on average, that's $770. So option B isn't just $700 cheaper in total. It also lets you build somewhere between $700 and $770 expected more from investing the difference. So the net edge is $1,400 at least. Also consider the down payment cash that you keep. So if one option ties up $5,000 more up front, let's say keeping that $5,000 in a high yield savings account at maybe 4% for 4 years, that's roughly $850 of value. So if you add that to the side that keeps more cash free, that's great. So compare the total you'll pay, then add the value of the lower payment you'll invest each month and the value of cash you keep up front. Pick the lowest overall after those three. So step 5, how long should the loan be? Look, a shorter loan saves interest, right? But it raises the payment because you're spending it over a shorter number of periods, paying it back quicker. A longer loan lowers the payment, but does risk more interest, right? Usually longer rates do. Longer loans charge more interest. There's more uncertainty. Like, will you be employed years and years from now? The bank isn't sure. And being upside down as well, especially with these cars, right? Like, as you could be owing more than the car is worth. If you take a 7 or 8 year loan on a car, like a Mercedes S-Class, for instance, it's brand new. Mercedes S-Class, most of them, brand new, they're going to drop by 10% roughly a year. So, you know, it's not necessarily the smartest thing to do. So the practical default is usually a 3 to 4 year, 36 to 48 month loan. You stretch longer only if all the following are true. The interest rate is truly low, like near zero or clearly below what your safe cash can earn. Next, you know, your all-in cost still fits in your lane. Next, you definitely auto-invest the payment savings, right? So if you're saving on the longer loan by paying less per month, take that difference, automatically invest it. Just set it and forget it. And finally, you won't be upside down for most of the term. So check that you won't be like in negative equity so that you're owing more than the car is worth. Now, if the rate is average or high, long loans usually equal more interest, while a fast depreciating asset, like a car, it loses value beneath you. A pro tip, though, is if you do stretch a low rate loan into long loans, create what's known as a sinking fund. So auto-invest the difference between, let's say, a 4-year, 48-month payment and your longer term payment. It'll be lower per month. So look at the difference between a 4-year and let's say you've got a 7-year. Look at the difference per month. Invest that difference. You keep the time value win and can pay off early if needed, because you don't have to wait 6 or 7 years. You can always pay it early. It's a little side note on exotics and special cases. So in the exotic or limited supply world, buyers often choose the longest low-rate loan on purpose. But their values of their cars can be flatter after the big drop. So preserving cash for business or deals makes sense. So if you buy the right car, documented, already past the heavy depreciation the first few years, for instance, you keep the miles low, conditioned to, and you have a clear exit plan. That's great. Now, for everyday cars, for everybody else, do not import exotic car logic. Mass market cars depreciate steadily to scrap metal or zero, and don't reward long, pricey loans. Step 6, don't let the payment trick you. Negotiate by out the door, OTD, out the door price. So that's the total after taxes and fees. How much would I have to pay to get this car out of the showroom? I don't want any hidden stuff. Not what monthly can you afford, right? You really want to understand this. So get a written OTD or out the door quotes by email from at least 3 dealers. Now, here are some negotiating pro tips that I've used. So number 1, ask for the sales manager or the internet or the fleet manager up front. Go straight to the decision maker and to the internet pricing. So comparison plans or comp plans, they vary a lot. The goal is you want to have fewer handoffs, faster yes and no. Not like, the salesperson is going to check with the manager. You want to deal with the head person. So we're not trying to stiff anyone here, right? Although in some rare cases, you can save on commission if you go straight to the manager. It's no problem working with the salesperson. Ask the manager first. They might tell you have to go to the salesperson. That's fine. But just keep the manager CC'd, if you will, in the emails. Also, hunt aged inventory. So dealerships finance what's known as a floor plan for their lot cars. And they pay more the longer a car sits, 30, 60, 90 days. So do ask them, do you have any units that you really want out of this lot? Because a lot of the times what they'll have to do is they'll have to just cut their losses and just sell it at wholesale prices, right? They just go on an auction and they'll lose a lot of money that way. So after about 90 days, that's when their finance costs start to eat up their profits and they really want to get rid of it. They'll try to auction it, lose a lot of money. So you can come in a little bit above auction, but you'll get a bit of a deal there, right? Sometimes. So just ask them, do you have any units, any cars that you really want to get off this lot? Because lot cars, especially near 60 to 90 days, or the prior year models, especially when you have a version of a car that maybe it's like a 7 years, gone for 7 years, and it's the same version as next year's car. It's just like, it was 20, whatever the last year was. So it was last year's version as opposed to next year's version, right? The new one is just coming out or something like that. It's great. Also odd colors or options. Now, again, you're just going to hurt your resale a little bit, but you can get a big discount. They get the biggest discounts. I have found that. Take the car on the lot when the deal is right. Ordering is fine, but lot cars and aged unit pressure often price better. I have done this myself. When I got my Subaru Forester over a decade ago, I remember thinking, okay, I like the car, I like the model, I've got it the right price, I've got the right version, that lower insurance. And I remember almost buying, and one of the people there was showing me that there was 2 or 3 versions on their lot, and they stressed that if you took these ones, you would actually get a better deal than ordering online. Now, that was great for me. I didn't know this tip at the time, but I saved thousands of dollars, a few thousand. There was at least $2,000, $3,000 difference between ordering online and just buying the car that was on the lot that was sitting there 2 or 3 months. So getting a lot car, again, it's pretty much almost zero owners. It's got next to no miles. As long as there's nothing wrong with it, etc. We're not really talking about second-hand cars here, but a lot car is a lot cheaper, usually. Not always, but it can be a lot cheaper, pardon the pun. Now, in terms of negotiation, just a reminder, like start with the sales manager, the internet manager, whoever's the manager, ask for the aged inventories, cars sitting 60, 90 days on the lot that are costing them money. Like what are the cars you really would like to move? That's your leverage. Come pre-approved at a credit union. So you want to let the dealer try to beat that. Now, say no to add-ons because where they make most of their money is in the finance, but also in the maintenance and the repair afterwards, right? They make a bit of money on other sides too, but the finance is a huge part of it. So say no to add-ons that you didn't ask for. Paint sealants, VIN etching, nitrogen boost, like all kinds of stuff like that. If it's used, if it's a used car, and I've done this too, get an independent PPI or pre-purchase inspection. So when I'm buying exotics, that's all I do. When I buy my next car, be a luxury car, second-hand car, that's what I do. And walk away from flood or salvage weirdness, right? You don't want that. It's almost impossible to sell again salvaged cars that have really damaged. Step 7, check your insurance before you fall in love. The same car can cost wildly different amounts to insure. So get quotes before you sign. Raise deductibles if you have the cash cushion. Bundle with home or renter's insurance and reshop yearly. Look, a car that's worth $50 a month, cheaper to insure, that's $600 a year to your wealth. And look, in my case, I went from $3,000 on one car insurance to $1,000. So I saved $2,000, right? In fact, when I was ringing around the end of the year that time, I had multiple properties. I ended up saving $6,000 by reshopping in terms of short-term rental insurance. I was with proper insurance. I switched to State Farm. The same with autos, right? So my car. And the stakes were huge. I was paying way too much in terms of insurance. I was paying $4 or $5 grand on home insurance over the course of years for my properties. I dropped that down to close to like $1,000, maybe $2,000. So I saved $6,000 in total, and for the car, I saved $2,000 a year. Huge. Now, in terms of your service plan, after warranty, a great local independent mechanic can save you serious money versus the dealer. This is what I've done. And you'll often get faster, more personal service. So look for stronger reviews. Also, something like ASE certification and brand experience. Keep every invoice in a folder. Maintenance records raise the resale value. I found that to be true. Clean records make your car easier to sell later. Step 8, plan the exit the day that you buy. So decide how long you're going to keep it and the mileage that you're going to tolerate. If you hold for years, pick reliable trims. I did, with cheap parts and service. That's what I was doing when I got my first car in the US. If you rotate sooner, so if you're not keeping for years, then still choose models that resell easily and do not fall off a cliff after the warranty is over. So having an exit plan stops you overspending now and gives you a target resale later. So look, I love the Subaru Forester years ago. I bought it and I was looking at 2 models. The next model up, the insurance skyrocketed. So I was told beforehand to do that, so I saved money there. Also, I chose the Subaru Forester largely because of the magazines. All I could find out was that it was one of the best cars secondhand. So I was looking forward 5-10 years to see what will it be like in 5 or 10 years. And so you make the actual purchase based on not just what it looks like right now, but where it's going to go in the future. You can really see this with a lot of cars that have been out for a long time. Like the Subaru Forester was a classic example of that. Very reliable as well, right? Incredible saves on the insurance, on the maintenance, on reliability. And there are other vehicles, like some people look at the Jeeps, certain Jeeps, the Jeep Wrangler have a very low depreciation. They're very good for maintaining their value. There are other cars as well. This is not the video for it, but there are plenty of cars that you can look into that have excellent exit plans. So let's make it real with a quick example, a balanced lane. Let's say you take home $6,000 a month after tax, and you're going to choose a balanced or 12% of your take home spent on a car, total cost. So the target there is $720 a month. That's 12%, all in, your payment, your insurance, any fuel that you use, maintenance, you name it. You're going to compare, let's say, a 4-year-old car, a certified used sedan, versus a new one with a big rebate. So the insurance, let's say the quotes that you get for the new car, maybe it's $30 more, right, to insure because it's new. The dealer might offer you either 0% or a $3,000 rebate if you go for outside financing. If the outside financing could come from a credit union at 5%. So the totals, if you're getting the 0% on 25 grand, then it's going to cost you still 25 grand. If you get $3,000 off, plus the 5% that you've actually got elsewhere that you've got to pay back, that means, okay, 3,000 off, that's 22,000, and you're paying 5%, it's going to end up costing you $24,300. So in this case, the rebate of $3,000 plus the credit union loan is cheaper by $700, even though it's not 0%, see? So be careful just hearing 0%. The payment gap, that's $700 over 48 months. That's $14 a month of a difference in terms of the payment gap. You could then also invest that extra gap, that $14 a month extra gap. And that would basically add between about 700 in high yield savings to, let's say, 770 in the stock market, more advantage to the cheaper option, right? So that's even better. Now, if the used car, let's say that's also going to save you $30 a month insurance and $20 a month in fuel. So let's say we get it for $50 a month. Well, that's $2,400 over the 4 years, 48 months. And that's easily going to outweigh the new car financing edge, the $700, as long as both stay under $720 a month and match your exit plan. The bottom line is that between the two new car offers, take the $3,000 rebate and the 5% loan from the credit union, because you're getting the whole thing for $24,300 total, not 0%, right? But if the used car truly saves $50 a month to run, it's likely about $1,700 ahead overall. The $2,400 savings minus the $700 new car finance edge. And it will keep you inside the $720 a month lane. So look, there's zero drama here. You're going to pick the lowest overall after counting totals. You're going to invest the difference, cash is kept up front, and ongoing costs too, and keep everything inside your lane. So the bottom line is use one rule, the total cost inside a lane that you choose. Lean lane 8%, balance lane 12%, enthusiast lane 15% of your take home for the whole car bill. Price, interest, insurance, fuel, maintenance, minus what you're going to sell it for. Then pick the cheapest money by comparing total paid plus the payment difference you'll auto invest plus the cash you keep up front. You're going to default to 3 to 4 years, that's 36 to 48 months, but only stretch out longer these loans if the rate is truly low and it still fits into your lane. Get out the door quotes from 3 dealers, insurance quotes before you sign, and do a proper inspection and know your exit. Do this once and your car stops being a wealth leak. Every saved dollar speeds up your freedom timeline. Before we wrap up, here's the tiny protection stack that wealthy families use, simplified for the rest of us, so one accident doesn't erase 10 years of progress. Number 1, consider umbrella insurance. This is like a $1 to $2 million shield. Now, you can add this $1 to $2 million umbrella on top of your auto or home or landlord policies. It's designed for the rare, expensive lawsuit, exactly the risk that ruins a plan. And by the way, it's so cheap. It's dollars. When I discovered how cheap these are, they're so cheap for the umbrella insurance relative to the other insurance you're paying. Match your underlying liability limit. So raise your auto, your home liability to qualify. You can ask the insurance representative for this. Add household drivers, list your properties, anything that you have in terms of assets that you want to insure, and review this yearly, because you might have something might have changed. Maybe you had a boat, maybe you no longer have a boat, maybe you have a car, maybe you no longer have a car. Review it yearly just in case. Just talk to your insurance rep, update it. Now, in terms of an insurance shop play, so price, coverage, and services are three levers. So shop all three yearly. So the process is that you want to pull your current declarations pages and ask at an independent broker for 3 quotes per policy. If you've got car, home, landlord, short-term rental, umbrella, you name it, right? Whatever it is. Now, the coverage aims you want to make sure that you've got adequate liability limits, whether it's like uninsured motorist or underinsured motorist, or 2 different ones on cars. What are the replacement costs is on homes or landlord policies. The correct short-term rental endorsement, if applicable. Sometimes they tell you can only rent it a certain number of days a year. I found out that the hard way. So be sure that you get the right policies. And if applicable, if you add flood or earthquake, if you're in those kind of areas, if those kind of risks exist. Again, this is not in standard home policies, but just be sure that you do it the right way. Again, I'm not a licensed insurance agent. If you want to get insurance advice, you should speak to a licensed insurance agent. But this is just my experience I'm sharing with you guys from years of experience. Just personal opinion, not to be taken as actual legal advice or insurance or financial advice. Now, certain money moves that you can do to raise deductibles, like that's one thing. Like raising deductibles, like you could comfortably pay. So make sure that you don't like raise deductibles to like 100 grand, something silly like that. Like the stuff that you know that in a stick you could actually pay this, and that will lower your monthly. Now make sure that you bundle the value where it's cheaper. So maybe having the same insurance company that's basically having your house as well as your car, things like that. Just drop any kind of junk add-ons. There's extra things they're adding on you don't need. Maybe like you've got multiple cars and you don't really need a rental car, as if that jacks up your insurance. If you don't need like insurance for a rental car, like 30 days, I need a loaner car. Well, I don't need a loaner car if I got multiple cars. If I live with a spouse or family members, maybe you can get by for a while. Right? They did in the past, so I'm sure you'll be fine. Right? So that's way, if you really are trying to cut costs, that's one key way of doing it. It's actually way cheaper to do that, things like that. And also thinking about calendaring all this. Like every 12 months I do this. Like I reshop, not just for insurance, by the way, for other things, utilities, internet, etc., phone, etc. But insurance is a key thing. Now, also one thing, especially in our modern age, is cybersecurity or identification. So freeze your credit. There's the 3 main ones in the US, like TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Go on, freeze the credit. Ask someone, if you're not tech savvy, ask someone to do it for you, but definitely freeze your credit, because all of a sudden someone else can use it, your score drops and it takes ages to fix it out. So much better to do that. You can also check your credit once a year for free without anything dinging your score. Now, another thing to think about doing is adding an identity or ID restoration if it's not already included. That all has to do with cyber and ID theft. Now, I saved thousands reshopping. I also freeze my credit, but I've saved thousands. So it's proof that it's worth the calls. My mother used to do this for years and years and years. Every year she'd ring around. She had the cheapest insurance. And every year the insurance is going up. Oh, inflation. Oh, the cost. Oh, blah, blah, blah. But she would ring around and she would bring it back down and bring it back down and bring it back down. And you can do the same too. You can do it with phone. You can do it with internet. But insurance is a big line item for most people. So this is worth your time. Unless you're someone like Tony Robbins earning thousands of dollars an hour, this is worth your time because you can save thousands, quite literally, doing this. I have, you can. Even when you don't have many properties or any property, even if you just have one car, even if whatever it is, you'll save hundreds, right? You'll save at least a few bucks by shopping around if you've got next to no insurance. But if you do have like at least one property, at least one car, that's where the savings start to kick in. The more you have, the bigger the savings from ringing around. I can't guarantee it, but I will say it's one of the biggest tricks that I use every year. Every year I feel great because I lower the fixed costs constantly. Or if it's going up, I hold it at the same. So even though other things going up with inflation, I'm holding a lot of things constant, and that is a game changer for me every single year without fail. Now, beyond this, titles, beneficiaries, even a simple will. So most people, they don't need exotic trusts to get 80% of the benefit. So do this week. Just add a beneficiary or like a transfer on death if you die, or an investment, a brokerage. For a lot of these things, they may be for checking accounts, some are for investment. Something like a payable on death, that's more to do with banking or credit unions as opposed to transfer on debt, which is more investment and brokerage. Just make sure that you've added these things in terms of the designations, like who is going to get it, like to your bank or brokerage retirement accounts. Because it can be really difficult afterwards. To just create a simple will and a medical or financial power of attorney. So in case you're incapacitated, a certain surgeon has the right to make a decision. Or in case you're incapacitated, someone else has the right to make financial decisions. Because you could be, God forbid, you could be in a coma or you could be brain dead essentially or something like that, like a vegetative status. So these things, I know, we should do them. And honestly, like when my aunt, she's a lawyer, I spoke to her about this and she said sometimes this is not legal advice, but she said sometimes you can just write a page, a few little things, you can get like AI, check it with it, and it's better than having nothing. I'm not going to advise it. I'm just going to say what I've done. And it took me a few minutes. And then I went and I found 2 people who were not related to the will. They weren't going to benefit because you have to get people in Ireland, you have to get people who don't benefit from the will to sign this. I mean, I went into my gym and got random people to sign it. So, it covers me basically. It's not great, but it's better than nothing if you've got no money. Now, you want to check this with an attorney. You want to check this all yourself. This is just a simple hack that I did. The next stage is to basically go and do it properly with an actual attorney. So just keeping a 1 page of in case of emergency sheet. I have this like Empower, like these different apps where I've got all my logins or I've got all my accounts and I have them, safe, or I have them in a safe that basically, if there's a fire, basically everything burns down, it won't get burnt down, it's inside the safe, things like that, or inscribing it like on a metal, like that's what people do in crypto, etc., the passwords. So having a 1 page in case of emergency sheet, logins, key people, policy numbers, because I have so many things that it would be horrid for my loved ones to go through afterwards. So keeping it simple really helps them, and also means that they get it, not the state. Now, LLC basics, so this is for side hustles or for rental properties or anything else you're doing. Either you're doing it as a side hustle, rental, or this is your main thing. LLCs is like a fence. It's not a fortress. It just separates business from personal if you do it correctly. So opening up a single member LLC for your business or your rental, getting an employer identification number, EIN, separating the bank account like a business bank account after the EIN, a simple operating agreement. Like I have videos on this, so it's just looking at the basics. You can do this very, very cheaply, okay? Just a few $100. Title, come up with a title like a new, and make sure that you put the new business use assets inside the LLC. Sign contracts as the member of the LLC. Keep clean books. For short-term rentals, you might want to use the correct landlord or short-term rental policy. Make sure that you obey the local compliance and all the written house rules. Trusts, very advanced. Now, this is what the average person needs. So something like a revocable living trust, this avoids probate, right? Where the government after death, they're trying to go to the court and try to figure out who gets what. Rather than the court deciding, you get to decide, right? So this avoids all that. Just keeps things organized, and also it doesn't, by the way, provide full asset protection, but it's a first step towards that direction. So put the house, maybe their brokerage in it, consider doing that. Consider keeping beneficiary designations on retirement accounts. And the alternative is something like an irrevocable trust. Here is like true asset protection and tax planning, but you do give up the actual control. This is an advanced topic. This would be for a separate video, but you might want to look into irrevocable trusts. Now, in terms of income protection, this is often bigger than the house. So term life, this is something that a lot of people like Dave Ramsey and others. So if someone relies on your income, like children, dependents, this could be good. This is like simple level term that covers income and debts, and as well as like children, right, through their independence. And it ends if like, let's say you don't die within that term, then the policy ends. Term life is the default. If someone relies on your income, just buy the simple level term that covers your income, the debts, the children, etc., through their independence.
Whole life.
It's a permanent insurance, essentially, with the cash value component. So it can fit niche goals like estate planning when you're handing off your stuff to your dependents. Let's say your inheritance, so you're giving stuff away after you die. Special needs protection, or a business buying and selling. And look, it's expensive and it's slow to build value. But if you've ever heard of family bank, or infinite banking, or borrow from yourself rather than the bank, remember that you're borrowing against the policy and you're paying interest. It's not free money. But for most families, the term and invest the difference, that's usually what they do. Consider whole life only if you have a permanent insurance need and you're already maxed out all those cheaper options. Now, disability insurance, this is like, on your own occupation, whatever it is you're working at. If this is possible, this could be great because your greatest asset is your future earnings. If you're a pianist, you insure your fingers. If you're a dancer, you insure your legs, right? I'm sure it's the same in the trades, right? If you really think about this, disability insurance is very important. For me, I don't do this, but it could be my eyesight for reading as an academic, etc., right? So do these 5, and you've already built a real moat. It's cheap. It's boring, but it's powerful. And that's it. We have covered pretty much everything you need to know to get started and build your foundation with respect to financial literacy. You can come back anytime and watch this video again. It's going to stay on this channel. If you want to check out the tools, the guides, the calculators that were featured in this video, they're part of my Wealth Builders Toolkit, from paycheck to financial freedom. This is a toolkit designed to help you manage your money like the elite. And what you saw today, the templates that you saw, it's about 10% only of what's actually included. You get your financial toolkit to keep you on track with your financial progress, including your income, your spending, your debt tracker and debt flex checker, your savings and investment, your net wealth, and your goal calculator, and so much more. It's all in one place. You'll also get access to a mini video series that's accessible nowhere else on the internet. These are short, focused, binge-worthy, high-value videos that you can watch at your own pace. So rather than have to read through dozens of pages of books or guides, you can digest these short videos with summary bullet points below and extra material that is referenced for you. A short series of 3-minute videos packed full of power is much more enjoyable than reading long guides. And look, the idea is to take your finances from complete chaos to complete clarity and mastery. There's even a PDF worksheet to help you work out your goals, and one sample pre-written one just to give you some inspiration, some ideas. And look, each video comes with the main takeaways and links to any calculators used, as well as any extra material that you might wish to consult. It's geared towards true wealth creation, not just financial well-being, not just spreadsheets. It's a complete financial decision-making system with practical tools, real-world tested strategies, and guided framework built by someone who actually went from $0 to multimillionaire. It covers the full journey, like budgeting, saving, debt freedom, investing, right the way up to property entry point. So you'll find everything you need to build a really solid financial plan. The tools you need to build a clear financial plan that will help you turn your dreams into reality. You can find more information on profmichaelcurran.com/wealth-builders-toolkit for all of the details. And there's a link in the video description here below as well. And there's currently a special offer early access code for the first few hundred people. You don't have to do everything at once. Just take one step. Your future self will thank you. So let's build your wealth one step at a time. Thank you so much for watching, and Ganairi Lat, as we say in Ireland, or may fortune be with you. But remember, luck equals opportunity plus preparation. So will you take the next step and be prepared?